I hope.
How are you?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor has called the local planning agency meeting to order. Vice Mayor Kaplan,
Here.
Councilmember Dela Cruz,
Here.
Councilmember Gross,
Here.
Mayor Lindsay,
Here.
Councilmember McCormick,
Here.
Councilmember Moss,
Here.
Councilmember Petros.
Here.
We do have a quorum, Mayor, if we may please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item, Mayor, is the approval of the minutes for the April 14, 2015 local planning agency meeting.
Move.
Do I have a second? Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item, under resolutions, it's a public meeting and recommendation of Village Council sitting as a local planning agency on the following proposed resolution. A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving the evaluation and appraisal report, providing for transmittal and providing for an effective date.
Move. Second.
Madam Mayor, if it's appropriate, sometimes during the LPA, since this is on the agenda later, if the council would like, you could move it as a recommendation going forward and then address this at the actual council meeting instead of hearing it twice tonight. So it's up to the council. Instead of having a major discussion right now, you can hold that discussion until it's later on the council agenda. Or, if you want to have a
Work the opposite?
Or we can have a
Yes.
shorter discussion during the council meeting. We
Whatever
can have the
way you like.
substantive now and then go more through the voting process at the second meeting.
That's correct. You can do either.
I think we're going to be happier if we do it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I do have someone signed up for,
For the local planning agency, I don't have public comments as part of this agenda. I do have it as part of the special council meeting agenda, so.
and this goes to, it's just a general issue? It's not.
Correct.
Good, so then we'll hear it at the next meeting. Okay. Frank, do you want to start the discussion off on the?
Yeah, I want to, first of all, I think that Corradino Group did a very good job. And I want to get this done and get this in because it's necessary. And it also, I should like to point out, doesn't need to be absolutely infallible and comprehensive in every single detail that has occurred that touches on all of these items over the last 7 years. But I did find what I consider to be a handful of things that I think are just inaccurate. So I've sent to Jenny my thoughts on what they are, along with maybe about 10 or 12 or so suggestions that I think are optional, decision points. I'd like you to send that to Corradino for take it or leave it. Send it to council as well, of course. Take it or leave it on the suggestions, but on the things that I think are inaccurate, I think they're inaccurate. So we don't want to miss asserting what we've done over the past 7 years, where it's clear and demonstrably an implementation of a policy, and there were some misses on that. And I think we don't want to be clearly inaccurate factually on stating status. So that's my input.
I appreciate that. I am glad you did that. I would love to know what the proposed changes are, just to make sure that we're, all on the same page, I think. But thank you for doing that. Much appreciated.
I offer them as take it or leave it because I think we want to get this done and in, and it won't matter.
Fact or nuance, sometimes that
Yeah.
it matters, and sometimes it's just a matter of interpretation.
The things that I consider to be flat out inaccurate are things that relate to the fact that we did certain projects, successfully consummated projects over the last 7 years. The obvious examples are Mast Field, Mast Cambridge, the renovation of the K-8, the establishment of the easements north and south at Oceana, and the Corner Park, the establishment of the easement from Harbor Drive into Colusa, and the shelter improvements we did at Colusa.
Absolutely.
those are not, I think, controversial. There are some other things that are judgment calls. I think, for example, the non-implemented way that Corradino described our management of the historic preservation element it's not wrong, but it's not right either. So I suggested a different path. That's what I consider to be a take it or leave it.
Right, and now we have the beach club, what did it do?
Right. And there
Club
were
designation.
several other things. There's been discussion over a long number of years about renovating the Calusa Playhouse. There was a lot of work for a number of years about acquiring a Mackle, putting it on a flatbed, and moving it to 530 Crandon. So there have been initiatives to try to fulfill that element in our plan objectives.
Or creating a museum on site at one of the original Mackles.
That's right. The Nixon Beach motorized vessel zone is another example of seagrass protection that was missed in this. So they're just the things that I saw reading through this.
Well, in Jim's Flats.
Right. That's what I'm referring to.
Do we have the time that we submit this in July to the following year where we can make adjustments to the amendments? Can we make those changes in that time?
Yes. And we want to do that.
Yeah.
In fact, we want to do it in a much more collapsed time frame than that time. Yep. There's another one that I think is rather important. We actually did take steps to reduce density. We amended the HR district zoning. The effect of that amendment is to reduce density. 101 Sunrise reduces density. So these are things that, I don't think that's an unimportant detail. The other reason why I think it's helpful to get these things that are obvious correct is because, people are going to be living with this in the future. And if they're not complete and not correct in material respects, the chance of missing something because we all don't have the same collective knowledge is going to be higher. So that's it.
Council, any other discussions? Please call the question.
Chad, is it appropriate to do a roll call or a voice vote? Councilmember Gross?
Yes.
Mayor Lindsay?
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Petros?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan?
Yes.
Councilmember De La Cruz?
Yes.
Motion carries. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.
Our meeting on the local and planning agency is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Officially the shortest meeting we've ever had. Yes.
Mayor has called the special council meeting to order. Vice Mayor Kaplan?
Here.
Councilmember De La Cruz?
Here.
Councilmember Gross?
Here.
Mayor Lindsay?
Here.
Councilmember McCormick?
Here.
Councilmember Moss?
Here.
Councilmember Petros? Here. You do have a quorum, Mayor. Next item is a brief comments by council.
Council members?
I thought we sounded a little weak tonight on the Pledge of Allegiance. Like we need vitamins or something. Must be summer doldrums. I promise to do better.
You promised to do what?
The next item is agenda approval deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, withdrawal.
I have a couple of things. Under special presentations, we're going to have Spencer Crowley here shortly. I don't think he's here yet. And he'll give us an update on the current status of our beach renourishment project and meetings that we had with the county mayor's office and so on. And also before you have an update from Colleen as far as issues that have happened since the last time we talked about this. So if we can add special presentation 5A or B, whichever one. If he's not here, then let's leave Michael Futterman at A. And then I'm going to keep the agenda item that I already have on the agenda just in case there's something else to talk about, but I'm not going to use it if we don't have to.
Any other?
I think that's it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item, Mayor, is public comments.
Our first speaker is Andy Garcia.
No other.
No other individuals have been signed up.
think he's
Oh,
coming
I
in.
think he's here.
He's here.
Hi, Mr. Garcia. We were waiting for you.
I wasn't expecting a much more casual. It's your turn.
Yes, please come in.
How are you?
Good,
I have a
nice-
1989 Toyota Land Cruiser for sale. Anybody interested? No, I'm here to talk about my condition at my house.
Your name and address, please. And
Oh,
then
Andy
please-
Garcia, 14 Harbor Point, Key Biscayne, resident here since at the house since 1991, I believe. And before that, renting at Galen Drive, trying to convince my wife to marry me. We've had issues at the house with the drainage. As you know, that property belonged to Mr. Underwood first, back in the day. And there was I think it was the only outfall drain on Harbor Point that it still exists, the same drain that has existed there since probably the 1960s or before. I'm not sure if it was actually Mr. Underwood who put it in there or was in there when it was a property for, Coconut Grove, whatever they had there, when it was just like a sand peninsula. When that property kind of managed a little bit of the situation with the drainage. When there was less houses on that property, I would imagine, and more of a natural seepage with sand and so forth. But as the entire point get built up with homes and the new electricals and, the cable and all that went underground, all that road was pitched towards that one drain, which is at the mouth of my driveway. So obviously when a hurricane comes, it's even worse. But even with a rainfall that we had for half an hour, the water level tables get to the point where they go over the curb of my driveway and start creeping into my garages. And that's just with a, normal deluge, South Florida deluge, because the entire street pitches from the cul-de-sac, from the beginning of the Harbor Point to that drain, and from the cul-de-sac down to that. There's one drain in front of the De La Cruz, but that's on the pitch, so basically things just, say hello and keep going, and things gather up. The conversations we've had over the years with the city, with Jose, everybody's been very helpful about creating somehow a larger outfall with a larger pipe. They spoke about, potential French drains, getting down to the aquifer, all these things that obviously involve Durham. And there are greater people with more expertise than me about this. But certainly the drain that we have now is not handling this problem. Not only is it affecting specifically my house, which gets, in this last hurricane, I had to, tear down the entire first floor because of mold, the encroachment of water that went in there. But also it creeps up even up to the Easton's house and up to where, like 7 Harbor Point, like where the Becks are. It keeps growing up, but this drain is just not doing the trick, It's always going to be a problem, but it'll be less than the problem with a better design, basically. With a bigger pipe, there's issues with king tides, obviously. The water won't drain until the tide goes down. But when you have a larger pipe and it's placed right now, the outfall is right inside the mangroves. So if you look at where the water comes out, even though the pipe might be 8 inches, what's there is like 3 inches because it's coming out right in through the roots of the mangroves and the dirt. And and it just can't handle it. Eventually, when the tide goes down, it seeps out, because if they keep it clean and they water pressure it, it'll seep out, But in a bad rain condition, I think that the reality of what people have thought about the engineers is we got to get the drain outside of the mangroves so it has a quick outflow, and somehow with the the leverage, so the tide, again, I don't know about what degree that's going to work. It might have to wait for the tide to drop before it goes out. I'm not an engineer, but the more we can mess with that situation and possibly get any kind of French drains in the street. So first things, that has to fill up before it even has to go somewhere else. That will help. In a hurricane, it's hard for anything to help, but in the local deluge, which the houses are affected, and especially obviously mine, because I'm right there, it will help tremendously if we can have some sort of big, whatever you want to call it, French drain or something before it hits the outfall, And those are questions with Durham, and there's a lot of questions with that. But obviously, if you have a big drain and that has to fill up before it has to go out, you're gonna whatever gallons of water that will handle will help with the initial flooding of that area. I'm not sure what else to say, but it's a very frustrating situation that we've all lived, especially myself, but everybody in that area lives through all the time when it rains. And I certainly have appreciated the interest in the people in the city with Jose and Melissa and everybody to resolve this, because they've seen it they go there, they've seen it. I can show you videos of just even especially in the hurricane what it looks like in there. I mean, it's an unfortunate. Listen, we're fortunate to live there. It's the greatest place to live in the world. But it's unfortunate that the reality of how this property is set up, because of the way that the streets are pitched, that nobody else on that street is taking the impact of that. It's only me, basically. Nobody else decided, you can pitch let's put another outfall over here and another one over there, and that would at least take care of, if the street went like this, then, you'd have take a little bit, he'll take a little bit, he'll take a little bit. Right now, everything's going like that, right to the mouth of my driveway and a drain that's this big, Literally, I think it's 8 inches, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, any questions that you'd like to ask of me to tell you?
Nope.
I can show you the watermarks on my shins.
Now, I believe that this had been looked into before, and there was a problem with getting an easement.
It's another easement. That was another easement.
Has that been resolved?
What happened was that when Alberto Beck's property, he bought the house that's between 14 Harbor Point and whatever the pink house is. There was an empty lot that he bought, or he bought a house that was there. He knocked it down. So before he built he was going to build another extension to his home, but now it's just more landscaping and a volleyball court. We had asked him if we could throw the easement in this area because it was open. And there was problems with coming to an agreement, having to do with what if I need to move it one day? And they sort of came back and forth with the lawyers, and at some point he said, I'm out. He got fed up with the process. And he built his thing, and it was over. So now the easement had to be transferred into my property, which is more difficult because there's a driveway there. You got to dig out the driveway. You got to rebuild the driveway. Whereas his, there would have been, an easier shot. It would have been cost effective. But there was, the two parties could not come to an agreement that was satisfactory to each one. It's my understanding that we have come to an agreement. So in terms of the easement on my property and the city's attorneys. Mm-hmm. And so we're just waiting for you guys to approve a budget to do it, is my understanding, And I believe that has been set aside to do. It's been set aside for a while to do that, yeah.
Okay, we'll look into that. Thank you very much for bringing it to our attention and letting us know what the status is. This is public comments.
I'm his lawyer, and the easement is on your agenda this evening.
Okay.
And we have worked with Chad and Lillian at Weiss Sirota, and we believe that it should be satisfactory to both parties. And we're looking forward to getting that executed by the village Mr. Garcia is in town, is also available to execute, so that way the work can then begin in the permitting process.
Okay.
Amy, can you just state your name and address for the record?
Yes. Amy Huber with the law firm of Shubin and Bass, 46 Southwest 1st Street, Miami, Florida, here on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Garcia.
And Amy, will you be speaking to the item when it comes up?
Yes, I'll wait until the item.
Okay, thank you.
How much for the Land Cruiser?
Huh?
Yeah, it sounds like a cool car.
$150,000 or an easement, or a grant.
Oh, no.
We can't do that.
What's that?
No, we can't do that.
We can't do
in
that.
Negotiation.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Next item under special presentations, Mr. Michael Futterman, CPA Audit Partner with Markham LLP 2017 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, if you have a copy of the 2017 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, you can follow along. Just a few items going to go through with it. For the record, my name is Michael Futterman, and I serve as the audit partner on the audit engagement. In the introductory section, on Roman numeral page 6, there's a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting, which the village receives each year. It's presented by the Government Finance Officers Association. And what's in this 2017 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report is the certificate that the village received for fiscal year 2016. The village has submitted this report to the GFOA for fiscal year 2017 and should receive the certificate of achievement for that also. What I wanted to go through was the auditor's reports. If you go to page 1, there's very few pages in this document that belong to us as the auditors. Obviously, these are the financial statements of the village, so all the pages and the responsibility for these financial statements belong to the village. But pages 1, 2, and 3 is the independent auditor's report. The first paragraph talks about what we've audited. The second paragraph talks about management's responsibility. As I mentioned, management's responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. The third paragraph talks about the auditor's responsibility, and our responsibility is to perform an audit and express opinions on the financial statements, but our audits performed in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, which is standard professional auditing standards issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And in addition, because we're a local government in the state of Florida, we're also required to follow government auditing standards. So the audit follows 2 sets of auditing standards. Page 2 has the opinions. I mentioned opinions, which is probably the most important paragraph in this document for your purposes. And it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. The respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the village as of September 30, 2017, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable cash flows thereof for the fiscal year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That's known as an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, which is really the only opinion you'd like to be associated with. Moving on, pages 4 through 12 are what's known as management's discussion and analysis. This is similar to what a public company has to prepare. And if you read anything in the document, it's a good summary of comparing fiscal year 2017 to fiscal year 2016 and explaining why balance has changed, the significant balance has changed from one year to the next. So if you're going to read anything, that would be something you'd want to focus on. The other thing, wanted to just go through some of our reports. As I mentioned before, the audits performed in accordance with government auditing standards, and as a result, we're required to issue a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance with laws, rules, and regulations, which you'll see on page 93 and 94. Within this report, if we encounter or come across any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over financial reporting or material non-compliance with laws, rules, regulations, we're required to present that in writing. So we're pleased to report that we have no material weaknesses and significant deficiencies or material non-compliance to report to the council. Then we move on to the management letter on page 95. It's management letter in accordance with the rules of the Auditor General of the State of Florida. And that's another report required by the Auditor General's office. And along with that, we had two comments. We call them management letter comments. They're like observations and recommendations. Both of them are the result of the comprehensive annual financial report being delayed. They both relate to the pension reporting, which has to be included in the document. And obviously the information was provided late. And as a result, the audit was issued on June 7th. And obviously it was the first opportunity to present it, but it's still late in the process in order for the financial statements. So there was that item, and there was also a second item where the village had to put in some additional funds related to their pension contribution for fiscal year 2017 because the annual financial report, which is prepared by the plan administrator, wasn't done on time, and the state withheld a certain amount of money from the village. So the village had to put the money in, but this village will get the money from the state, and once everything is filed, they do get it. But that's just a matter so we've reported those two items. One was the non-compliance with Chapter 175 Florida statutes relating to premium tax monies for the police and firefighters that belong in the pension. Like I said, and the other one was just the delay in getting the information in order to be able to complete the audit, because it shouldn't have to go to, until June of each year. In addition to the...
What was the explanation for the tardiness? Was there one?
Just the lateness in the pension administrator completing the work that she needed to do, because not only did she has to do her work, prepare the trial balance for the pension plan. In addition, they have to send information to the actuary because the actuary has to do certain valuations. So it just compounds when that's a little late. When that's late getting to the actuary, then the actuary has to do their work before they can prepare a valuation, and that's just...
Do you have the number of the money that that the village needed to kick in extra that we should get back?
Yes.
It's in here?
Yes, it's in the finding, right.
Thank you.
So, and you just said it shouldn't have to wait until June each year? Is that implying that this happens?
Well, no, last year the report was
okay.
issued in May, but that, again, similar.
This time?
Yes,
Right,
similar.
okay.
There's no reason why this shouldn't be able to be done, completed, and issued in April.
I didn't think.
Under Councilmember London, there was a benchmark set that this report was to be to the public, not done, but to the public by April 1st.
I think we were getting in September, October, and so it just got to a point where it was. I'd be curious to know if the pension administrator submitted the reporting late for other municipalities or other pension plans.
They did for one other.
They did for one other.
One other, and the other local government was in the same position where they had to
That's not
fund
good.
it on their own. But again, they get the money back because the state doesn't. They just temporarily withhold the money until they receive the information that they're requesting.
But it's good to meet deadlines.
Yes. So in addition to the comprehensive annual financial report, there was a separate letter that you received, was also just called the communications to those charged with governance. And it just talks about the audit, summarizes the audit process. You received one of these letters during the planning stages of the audit. You also then received one with the comprehensive annual financial report. And again, it just summarizes the audit process, and we talk about that the village, follows their accounting policies. They don't change them from year to year because obviously consistency is very important. There were no new accounting policies adopted for fiscal year 2017. We say we encounter no significant difficulties in dealing with management and performing and completing our audit other than delays in receiving the pension-related information, which caused delays in completing the financial statements of the village. We had no disagreements with management during the course of our audit. So that basically just summarizes the audit process, and if anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to address them.
So your observation about the tardiness of the pension administrator's submission isn't a deviation from our practices and procedures. It's just an observation.
Well, it's related to more for the pension, but it's causing the delay in completing the financial statements of the village because the information is incorporated. So it's more of an observation or recommendation. It's not a. I can't say it's a material weakness in the internal controls or financial reporting of the village because the village, it's outside of their control in order to prepare the trial balances and the general ledger for the pension plan.
But you had a deadline that you missed because you didn't have the information, and we're out of pocket, if, at least temporarily.
The deadline for the state of Florida is actually June 30th. So it was the pension plan that missed their deadline with the state in order to receive the police and fire premium tax monies, which then caused a delay, which caused the village to contribute that additional money for this year. Again, they will get it back. It's not, they don't rescind it, they just withhold it until they receive what they want to receive in to the division retirement. So that was the answer. Your answer. That's why we didn't report as a material weakness in the village's financial reporting, because it wasn't the village's financial reporting that was at issue.
And that's the thrust of my question. This isn't a black mark.
No.
It's an observation.
Right.
This would have been possibly not, it's worrisome but not consequential economically in 2017. It could be consequential economically in 2018. We don't want this to become a habit.
Right. And I believe the Board of Trustees, obviously the pension plan are addressing, obviously they have to address these issues, related to getting the information, more timely, and also in order for to receive the funds. Obviously that's more of an impact to the village.
Right.
Thank you. Any questions? Any additional questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Next item, Mayor, is a presentation regarding Key Biscayne Beach restoration by Spencer Crowley.
You ready for some good news, Mr. Crowley?
Well, hopefully I have some tonight for you. Nice to see you all, Mayor, council members. I'm here, as you know, I'm working on beach nourishment issues for the council, and we're pursuing several different initiatives in that respect. I wanted to come tonight and provide a brief update on the work that we've been doing, specifically related to getting Key Biscayne included into the federal project for Miami-Dade County. As you may remember, the current Miami-Dade County project expires in the year 2025. And so that timeline is coming up, although we have 7 years left. It takes the federal government a lot of time to reauthorize a project like that. A pot of money has become available at the federal level that was related to the storms from last year. And the Army Corps of Engineers is hoping to use that pot of money in order to commence the reauthorization process for the Miami-Dade County project early, so they don't have to wait until 2025. Through our efforts with the outreach to the Army Corps, we indicated that we were interested in pursuing this on behalf of Key Biscayne. They indicated that we needed to get a letter of support and as much support as we could from the local sponsor for the federal project, which in this case happens to be Miami-Dade County. So Mayor Lindsay was kind enough to send a letter to the county requesting that support. When the county received it, they called us to ask for a meeting so that we could come in and explain a little bit further of what we're asking for. Councilmember Gross and I went to meet with Deputy Mayor Osterholt, Lee Hefty, and some of the other Durham officials who oversee the beach management process for Miami-Dade County. And we actually brought a draft of the letter that we were hoping they would issue to support our project. And a couple of weeks ago, we received a letter. We received that support we wanted and needed so badly from Miami-Dade County. So it's a very positive step forward. Obviously, if the local sponsor is not supportive of our efforts, the federal government most likely wouldn't be. So it was a good step. We're working with our federal partners, Jim Davenport, who you all may remember. He's currently working on behalf of the village in Washington, D.C. He's getting similar letters of support from Congresswoman Ross Layton's office. Congressman Diaz-Balart has already agreed to sign on. He's working to try to get the rest of the Miami-Dade County federal delegation to sign on to that, as well as Senator Nelson and Senator Rubio to get their support. So I believe that's all I had. I actually have a copy of the letter, so I'll distribute that to you all. And happy to take any questions if you have any, but just wanted to give that brief report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While you're handing that out, Spencer, I'd like to bring up a couple other things, and hopefully you can comment on them. Sure. In regards to the reimbursement that we're seeking from the state of Florida for the project that we already did last year, I think it's $1 million reimbursement. The latest update we received is that we are still ranked number 21st in the top 20, which is available to receive money. Is this an update to the update?
No, this is the one we got.
Yeah. Okay. Good. There are two ways that as I understand it, there are two ways that we could possibly actually end up getting the reimbursement. Number one is if our project, which is already finished and paid for, gets ranked ahead of other projects that are still in the planning stage. And I understand there's a fairly good chance that that could happen, which automatically throws us into the mix for part of the $50 million the state has to reimburse. The second way it could possibly happen is for the top 20 to be increased to the top 21 or the top 22, and we would automatically fit into one of those two. So what's your take on that, and how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, well, that's a reimbursement for the truck haul project.
Right.
It was about 30,000 cubic yards that took place last year, I believe. And I know that Colleen and Fausto have sort of been running point on that specific component of this. I think that, and I know that Fausto was trying to get the top 20 included to the top 21, and I thought he had been successful at that, but I think there was more of an appropriation issue. So even though the top 21 were funded, there wasn't enough money to actually cover all of the top 21. So I think we're left a little bit reliant upon another project to potentially fall out, in which case we'll get funded. Now, the other thing about this is that the state reimbursement program is available every year. And so to the extent that we need sort of smaller interim projects until we get caught up with this federal program, there's obviously more opportunities to apply for the state grant. We can apply every year. We just need a project, so.
Good. Okay. And the second thing I wanted to bring up, and then I will no longer have anything to talk about during the agenda.
At all?
Well, maybe not. You never know. But I'll take advantage of your being here. It's terrific if we can get into the shoreline protection program, because that takes care of our maintenance of our beaches for the next 50 years, and that's great. But we have a major project that we still have to do. And I know that we're moving towards trying to get a 111 approval. 111, if you recall, is if we can show proximate cause that something the Army Corps did is as a direct effect on our beach problem, they will consider it and possibly approve helping us take care of that to the extent of several $1 million. And I know Jim Davenport is currently working this in D.C.
That's correct. That's
Do you
correct.
have any kind of an update on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So we've applied to the Jacksonville District for Section 111 Continuing Authorities funding. As you mentioned, that program is available for funding to fix problems that come about as a result of other federal navigation projects. In this case, we've gone back and looked at the records and shown that when Government Cut was first developed in 1904, shortly thereafter, the beach erosion on Virginia Key and Key Biscayne, and then Fisher Island was the south end of Miami Beach at the time, became very significant. And actually, Virginia Key has already received funding from the federal government under the Continuing Authorities Program, Section 111. So there's precedent for this as well. Jim he has included in his federal letters that are coming from our congressional delegation support not only for inclusion within the federal project for Miami-Dade County, but also for the Section 111 funding. So we've applied, we're in. He's working on that at the congressional level and also at the Army Corps level. So it's certainly something that's in process. I think the major issue we face in that respect is getting federal funding, getting the money appropriated for the continuing authorities program. The past couple of years, they haven't been funding that pot of money as much as we would hope to give us confidence that we could use it, but that's going to be our biggest challenge with that. But yes, we are still pursuing it for sure.
Thank you.
And I do think we had the monies appropriated from the state for the follow-up report that's due in October. I think we had gotten the 85,000. So,
I understand we do, yes.
yeah, so we've at least.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, of course.
We sort of set up a timeline at the beginning of when we would go forward and what we were going to do and when this should be completed by. Is there anything that has affected that timeline? And can you refresh my memory on when we should expect to have answers on all of this?
Well, with respect to inclusion within the federal project, our timeline, I think we had set up a series of sort of short, medium, and long-term initiatives. Inclusion in the federal project was a long-term initiative that was at the 5 to 7 year mark. The fact that the Corps has supplemental disaster funding that could potentially not only reauthorize the Miami-Dade project, but include Key Biscayne has significantly advanced that. So that's a very good thing for us. We could be looking at certainly less than 5 to 7 years, but still a couple of years out to do that. The Section 111 continuing authorities was on the 3 to 5 year time frame, and I think we're probably still on that time frame right now. Nothing significantly has changed with respect to that. And then as far as the state project, I think should the village come up with another local project that they want to pursue and go after state funding for, that's sort of, I think, in our control right now, whether we want to submit something like that. I know Tim Blankenship from Moffitt and Nichols has drafted a proposed sort of short-term solution that is up for discussion now as to whether or not it's going to move forward. So I guess as an overall response to that question, I think that the village is doing the right thing by helping to develop a beach management plan that is consistent and continuous and ongoing. And I think a lot of the communities that are most successful in this respect have made the determination that this is something that has to go on forever. It's like your public works program. It can never cease. It's not just let's do a project and then we're all fixed. It's something that you constantly have to attend to. And unfortunately, the time frames for dealing with the federal government are not as fast as we would like them to be. But I think we're on the right track. And certainly this news is positive in terms of getting that longer term goal advanced.
And I just think we as a group need to constantly monitor what we're spending on the project and make sure that we're feeling good about our efforts and our outcomes.
And I think we need our public works person to give us, quarterly reports or biannual reports as well. It has to be an ongoing reporting, and we need to be on top of it.
I've lost touch with one element. Maybe you could remind us about the proposition of offshore installations, breakwaters and the like, technologies to dissipate wave action and all that. We have our budget workshop tomorrow night, and I expect that subject might come up. What have we done? We're not planning, we're not doing engineering analyses, or are we?
My understanding is there's a draft report that's been underway by Moffitt and Nichols to show a potential configuration of offshore breakwaters that are parallel to shore, specifically in the area off the Village Beach, not up by Crandon or down by Bill Baggs, but that would do just that. I'm not sure, and that's more of an engineering exercise that Tim Blankenship is working on, and and that goes back to Councilwoman Petros's comment that that's the crux of the next sort of state project if it were to move forward. I think the best thing to do would be to invite Tim to come in and give a presentation on the status of that work, because I know he's been thinking about it.
Thanks.
Just to expand on that, I think that question brings to light the real importance of this Section 111 program, because not only does the Army Corps, if they decide they're going to work with us on that basis, not only do they fund it, they come in and design it. They supervise the installation. So that brings us a bunch of benefits, including their expertise as far as what types of systems and so on. So I think what we're doing now with Tim is, while it might be informational, I don't think that there's any way we start that kind of a project until we've played the entire Army Corps Section 111 program all the way to the end, and hopefully successfully.
Yeah.
They may have a totally different view on the way to handle it.
I agree with that. The only question really will be one of budgeting, and we probably are just not going to get through this budget season knowing with clarity what we're going to need to do next year.
I don't think a project will be budgeted for next
It won't, it definitely will not be next year. The only thing that we'll have to do next year depends on hurricane season.
Yes.
We will or won't have to do something based
Right.
on
And
damage.
as you stand now, the good thing about hurricane season, if there is any silver lining, is that you're able to apply for FEMA reimbursement for any damage that occurs to the beach that will supposedly get your beach back to the engineered condition in which it was supposed to be. So that's what you have to pursue if a storm hits.
So it's the Band-Aid projects.
Right.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Are we doing that for what we lost in the last storm?
John?
Tim was out on our beaches fairly quickly after the storm, so what we needed to do, we have done, and it's in our process. But
And
we
we
were on
had a
it right away.
FEMA representative the day after the hurricane, so.
Right, so you have to apply to FEMA to show them that you deserve reimbursement from a storm event, and it's a process to get through that. But Jupiter Island just got funding for a storm that was 2 or 3 years ago, so it takes a little while.
We had the same issue with Superstorm Sandy.
Right, that would be.
We had just finished a project, and we lost a little bit of that beach, what was it, a month later?
Yeah.
Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you all very much. Nice to see you.
Nice to see
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
I didn't know about the Virginia Key precedent.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how they got
Yeah, we did
the,
a pretty exhaustive public records request and analysis of all of the different precedents that we could think of, and that was one that really is helpful to us.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Mayor, is the consent agenda.
Move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is an ordinance on second reading, an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending the village code by amending Chapter 23 Retirement, Section 23-31 Definitions, Section 23-35 Contributions, and Section 23-36 Benefit Amounts and eligibility to increase the benefit multiplier to 3%, provide for the purchase of past service credit, provide an alternative 80% benefit cap, increase the maximum village contribution rate to 20% of covered payroll, and provide a minimum funded ratio of 80%, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for inclusion in the code, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
second.
Thank you.
Second reading. At last.
Fred, did you? Chad?
I was just going to say that at first reading, I know my partner Brett gave a pretty extensive background on this. If you have any questions, I have Milton from our office who can answer any questions that arise.
Thank you. Council members, any questions?
No questions for me. It's been a long time coming. Do you want to report on any of the history of this, or do you want to just get on with it?
I think that we beat this horse totally to death. We just approved a consent agenda that approved everything that has to do with this, and all this now is doing is making it legal, so.
And I think we were all on the same page at the last meeting. We just did not have enough time to really digest the information. We want to make sure we took a good read, but I think we're all good. Are we ready to call the question?
Should we open for public comments? I don't believe we have any.
Yes, because we didn't do it at the last. I am opening public comments on the ordinance before us.
I don't have any speakers signed up.
Closing public comments.
Thank you.
Now you can call.
Roll call, Mayor Lindsay,
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick,
Yes.
Councilmember Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Petros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan,
Yes.
Councilmember De La Cruz,
Yes.
Councilmember Gross.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted on second reading. Next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving the evaluation and appraisal report, providing for transmittal and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Do we get to include Frank's comments? Earlier? About the report and the
To
changes and
amend
all
it,
that?
to include Frank's.
Yes. Well, we would like to circulate the comments, make sure that we are all, and then approve it as amended.
And like I said, I don't, some of these are suggestions. Some of them are facts. And I think unless there is a disagreement about a fact, I think that the facts, and I tried to point out what they were specifically as inaccuracies. The others, they're really my suggestions, but I offer them take it or leave it for Corradino and for all of us.
Listen, the easements, the Pocket Park, Mast Academy, those are all words.
Yes, the
I think
density.
it's pretty important to get it right.
Yep.
I agree.
And some of us don't have the historical knowledge that you do.
And this provides it for not just us, but
And the
future
first-
councils.
Yes, and the first time I looked at this, I saw some things that I thought needed changing, and I spoke to them also. So I would very much like to see what you said, and I'd like to pass this pending his, dissemination of that information, and then us commenting on.
Do we have to have that circulated to us and vote on it, or can we
But we
just
have to
put
vote
that
on it
in
by
vote
July.
after?
I think let's, again, this is the EAR report. You guys need to submit this by July 1st. I believe that there might be some factual inaccuracies that can be corrected between this being sent to the state and now. I think that shouldn't be difficult. I haven't seen all of your comments, Frank, but I would presume that they're probably relating to changes in the policies.
There's a
going forward.
handful in the informational section that are purely judgment calls. Those are the things that are take it or leave it. And then I fly spec the objectives and policies and point out the things that I think don't include things that we've actually accomplished since the last year.
Okay, so we have a year to get that language right. At this point in time, we just have to notify the state. What are we going to do to amend our comp plan to come up to the state law requirements that are not in there? So, I think we can take Frank's comments and you can work with the Corradino group and implement them. And this is the first step in a year process.
Okay.
So why don't we
We can
approve
amend
this
it.
as it is
So let's just
now
approve it and then.
and calendar in October to have a follow-up with the different amendments?
I
Then we'll
urge
come
us
back in
not to
August.
do that. I think we should not do that because we will submit an year that has factual inaccuracies if we do that. These are easy to catch. Unless there's a disagreement about the facts, they simply get corrected, and that's what gets followed with the state.
I don't think it's a problem to correct factual inaccuracies.
Can we?
Frank, how do we
Look
take
through
care of it
these?
so we comply and file it by July 1st?
I would adopt it tonight with these comments to be reviewed by you and Corradino and all of us. And if they're copacetic with you factually, then we fix the facts. There are about 6 or 7. I don't have it.
So do you want to separate facts from policy?
It's not even policy. It's the introduction stuff at the very beginning of the year.
You don't like.
For
how it
example, I think that I would do it differently. The reasons for our population increase, in my opinion, are not accurately presented. It's not an important detail because we'll deal with that in our actual comp plan. But for sake of having status report that don't include the things that we've obviously achieved, or to have non-implementeds attached to some of the criteria that we had action plans for years now that we have achieved is just not correct.
Why don't you, make a complete list? Somebody has that list.
And now we all have it. Like, do we, instead of, sorry.
Let's agree upon it now and approve it now. Why wait?
So where's
I
the
don't want
list?
to wait. I want to
It's
do it
emailed
tonight.
to you. Can we all open it up and go through it right now?
Go ahead.
Somebody can just read them. He ran them off. The ones that he ran off, I remember them happening, so I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
I can try to.
Frank, can you read your email, please?
I don't have
Just
the
read your
email, but
You don't have the email.
Can I ask Chad a question?
Yes.
I have it here.
Did you, maybe I misunderstood you. We know we have to have this in by July 1st.
6 days.
You said we have a year from that date to
to do
make.
the amendments.
To do the
Oh, I
amendments,
just got it.
correct. This process
Now,
at
would
this
these
point-
be amendments?
Not to
No.
amend it,
No,
but
this-
to,
All right.
Yeah. I have the email that Jennifer circulated. If you want to just,
The gist of it is
do you want me to?
we reduced density by amending the HR. We actually reduced density. We had in effect reduction of density by permitting 101 Sunrise. So that's 3.5.5 in the conservation element.
I agree.
Throughout the document, we did the massed school project. We did the massed field. We have an ILA agreement that entitles us to use the field with scheduling, priorities, and et cetera. We also did the K-8 renovation project. There are a handful of things that are consequential because of those accomplishments, one of which was the reduction of the overcrowding situation in the middle school at the K-8 by creating a middle school at Cambridge. That's another example. Another example is the funding of the land trust, which we've been doing annually in our CIP. Another example lies in the intergovernmental coordination element. I don't think the areas that talk about the obsolescence of annexation deal adequately with the point that the objectives don't deal with annexation only, they deal with intergovernmental coordination where there's extra jurisdictional impacts. And as we've seen over the last 2 years, we've tried to deal with that on Virginia Key and other issues as well. Crandon Park is another example that's going to come up for discussion tonight. The Nixon Beach solution, Kim's Beach, relative to seagrass is another example. And those are the main ones. There's a few others. The historical element, I think they got wrong because we actually have tried to execute on a historical preservation element. We just haven't done a project. But it's not that it's not implemented, it just hasn't been achieved.
Well, you do have the beach club that we just.
That's right. There was a question about the residual septic system in the island. It's expressed inconsistently in the conservation element that it is, or the infrastructure element that it is in the introduction. It's either one or the other. And that's it.
That's it, nothing else.
I've read the email. I agree with it all.
I agree
So
with everything
I would
you've
pass
said.
it now.
So can we agree that they make those changes and proceed with the EA report?
I think this makes this product better and more accurate. That's my view. So I would urge us to do exactly that.
I'll make a motion to pass everything that was in the email that was distributed to us, amended to it.
Having read it, I second that motion. It's just nice to read the material.
Yeah.
Well done. All
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to enter into an agreement with Kimley Horn and Associates, Inc. for engineering and design services for the Safe Routes to School project and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, if I may, it is recommended that the Village Council approve the attached resolution authorizing the village manager to enter into an agreement with Kimberly Horn and Associates in an amount not to exceed for professional engineering services. The attached agreement, which you have as Exhibit A in your packet, was lowered by $99,317.67 from the original proposal of $167,890.51. Kimberly Horn has provided a memorandum as Exhibit B in your packet. discussing the items that were reduced. My charge at the last meeting, as articulated by council to me, was to go back and either renegotiate with Kimberly Horn, or if we could not come up with a satisfactory working number, was to then go to the next eligible firm, which would be some company, I believe, by the name of Marlin. The village attorney, Chad, myself, Anna, we went down and spoke with the Kimberly people, and what you have before you is their latest and last number. I do have people from Kimberly Horn here to answer any additional questions you may have. I was given a recommendation by Councilmember Gross that I fully appreciate the assistance. We do now have a new Public Works Director on board, and should you decide to move forward with this evening, we will have the Public Works Director take a look at this. Take a look at any concerns he may have, both about the funding or about the man hours. I will rely on him to make a recommendation to me, but I would like to move this forward if at all possible. We've already asked for one extension on this due to Hurricane Irma, so Gary, thank you, and it's...
You said there's a deadline that we're facing on this?
For funding, use it or lose it situation.
Under the background of paragraph 3 says that the grant deadline for the design component has to be by December 1st. I'm sorry, December 31st.
31st.
Yes.
John, do you feel that this is comprehensive enough to meet all our goals, even as amended?
There was a great deal of discussion. We're trying to do this on our own, a lot of the aspects of this on our own. We've probably put in an additional, 10 or 15 man hours into this, just going back and forth with things. Again, I think the questions can be answered, but this is fair, in my opinion. This needs to be done, in my opinion, and I turn the floor over.
Okay, Gary, but you feel that this is, again, substantive enough where you get everything you need and we can move forward with the design and we can do it well?
The next thing is for me to go out to RFP, speak with Marlon, and not get back to you until August, and we need this done before then.
Gary.
Yeah, just to elaborate for a second, my conversation with John today, unless we want to jeopardize our funding of $83,000, we have to get this approved tonight, because if we wait until August, we likely won't have enough time to get in under the 12/31 deadline, and we'll lose that grant, which we can't afford to do. What I did suggest to both the consultants and to the manager is that at the time this was started, we didn't have a public works director. We didn't have the capacity to do some of the things we have now. And because we are in a different position and we do have a very qualified public works director, I would like to approve this with the condition that the consultants work with our public works director, and to the extent any of this work can be done by us to further reduce the budget, they would be willing to do this. And to the extent there are issues that come up in that review with our public works director, they'll be addressed and hopefully make this more efficient and more economical.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
And then you'll be next, Brad.
No, I'm okay.
It strikes, this is a much more palatable number, first of all, so thank you for that. But it strikes me that we got there by just taking a lot of things out. My question relates to some of the things that we took out, specifically the studies for four-way stops. Can I just ask, John, it's really a question I think for you, if it turns out that we think these intersections warrant a study, since it involves the county, is it possible that they...
That's the recommendation, and that's what we would ask.
I understand. My question is, do they pay for that then? Is it possible to get the county to do the study?
Now, I don't know about paying for it. I know that I recently went through a process where we looked at all the intersections along Crandon Boulevard for lights and things of that nature. The county did that because that was what was required of them to do. I don't know that money's involved. I think that getting an early start on asking them to participate and get this done so there's no bureaucratic hangup, I think that's the strongest suggestion.
Okay. And we've had that, when we did the walk around the school, Anna, am I right that there was someone from the county? Yes. And so they've already been at the beginning stages of it. Okay.
Brett, did you want to add?
No, I'm okay.
Then I think we're good calling the question in a second.
My question was I was going to make a comment to Gary because he said he wasn't going to speak the rest of the meeting.
Oh.
What's that?
Yeah, you got a lot of talking after you weren't going to talk anymore.
Sometimes I just can't control myself.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to contract with Raftellus to perform a utility undergrounding special assessment methodology study and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Mayor and council, if I may, it is recommended that the council approve the attached resolution authorizing the village manager to contract with Raftellus to perform the utility undergrounding special assessment methodology. The purpose of hiring this consultant is to prepare a methodology for a special non-ad valorem assessment program as the funding mechanism to pay for the underground improvements. The methodology developed will identify factors that provide a special benefit to properties that have their utilities undergrounded. The special benefits received by properties for these types of improvements are improved safety, improved reliability, and improved aesthetics. The company has worked with the town of Palm Beach, Jupiter Inlet Colony, and the town of Gulfstream in preparing the assessment methodology for their undergrounding projects. We have had, half a dozen undergrounding task force meetings. If I may turn this over to Councilmember Moss, he runs this part of it much better than I can. Thank you.
I think I maybe mentioned this last time, but the Underground Utility Task Force has met in regards to this contract. This was the first proposal that we received. We went out for another one with another firm called Wilden, and they also brought back a proposal. We looked at, or they looked at both proposals very closely. It came to a very close vote, but the board decided that their recommendation would be with Raftellus. The main purpose, the main reason why I believe that the board voted for Raftellus was that the project manager of that company was highly recommended, was one of the gurus, the founders of these methodology system that they're using that's been proven in court. We did reach out to, with both companies, we reached out to other municipalities that have used both companies with both project managers, and they all had positive reviews, but I think in the end we felt more comfortable with Raftellus. I think this is a very important step in the underground utility project. This is probably one of the most important components, which really comes down to who pays and how much it would be. And right now, I don't know if our chair is here for the Underground Utility Task Force. I don't know if they want to add anything, but I think that's where that group stands. So if you guys have any questions, I can answer them as well.
Other than, I think this is great. This is our next step. It will hold us back from taking any further steps. I am concerned. I think we need to start doing the public outreach component because this is critical. How's it going to get paid and by whom and the whys? That's what's going to come back to us. So we need to start our community outreach.
I have that as a discussion item tonight. So I'll give you guys an update on that.
Okay, great. Please call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving Andrea Aga as the village manager, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement related to the same and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Any comments?
Was there a change in the, I don't have it sitting in front of me, I think it's in my bag, but we discussed, Chad, thank you. In 2.2, the one comment that I had, one concern that I had in 2.2 is that no later than 180 days prior to expiration of this agreement, that the village has to let our manager know that either we would not continue the contract or we will. What I'm concerned is that I also want the obligation to be on the manager to notify the council that they need to notify her on what the outcome is going to be 180 days before, because in 5 years from now, we may have a completely new group of people up here, and they really may not be aware of what the contract says. And I think and the manager will be very much aware of their own contract. So I think they should also have the obligation to notify prior to that 180 days to the council saying, I need to know if you guys are going to renew or if you're not. That's the only concern I came up with.
Can I speak to that? Because I actually worked with the lawyers and with Andrea on trying to come to the terms of the contract. And first of all, in the previous contract, it was, the only thing that we changed is the time frame from 4 to 6 months. And I would say that you have to remember that we as a council are employing our manager. So I think the duty really lies with us to be aware. And also, one of the things that she's been very open to is the concept of doing evaluations on an annual basis that would also help keep everybody current and keep the timeline going. So I'm not really sure if that needs to be part of the language, because I feel like this is our contract with her as opposed to something that goes back and forth.
I would suggest that the onus then would be on our attorneys to give the council notice saying, guys, this is the time, but I don't think it should be part of the contract. I believe in the mechanism because there is constant turnover, but I think it should not be part of the contract.
Her point is the best. We're going to be doing annual evaluations. It'll be at most 6 months from then when the 6-month period would come. So, I hadn't thought about that.
Is that okay?
That sounds good.
Good with that?
Yeah.
Allison.
I had one thing that Andrea and I discussed, and she didn't have a problem with, but I'd like to throw out to the rest of the council. I'd like to have an addition of just Chad had the language earlier today, a sentence sort of saying that she is unable to participate in real estate investments on Key Biscayne other than her primary residence. Just saw a conflict there that we looked at the county and state regulations, and it wasn't as clear as I would like it to be. I don't know if anyone has a problem with that. She's fine with it. Okay.
Yeah, so we discussed something to the extent that without council approval, the manager shall not directly or indirectly invest in real estate in the village of Key Biscayne other than her primary residence.
Fine with me.
Can I get a quick clarification back to the one the one point I brought up? What happens if we don't notify her within 180 days of the expiration of the?
That's a good question.
That's what I want to know.
I see why you want
Or is there a breach or something, or is it just in limbo of nobody knows what's going on?
No, I mean, if we don't notify the manager within 180 days, then she basically would have the ability to provide us on a shorter notice. I mean, we would be in breach, yes, which would kick us into, we're in breach of the agreement, and she could give us notice at a shorter time frame.
So why don't we just put the obligation on both of us to notify each other? I mean, that she has the obligation to notify us as well. What my concern is that there could be 7 new people up here. And what happens if our attorney forgets to tell us? And
Fired.
Okay, but I mean, we would have to make that decision, but that still means we would be breached of something, and people may not know what's going on. I just want to make sure we don't have that issue.
I don't remember seeing a clause in the contract that renews it for another 5 years, does there?
No.
Okay, so if it doesn't, then what does not telling her 6 months before, what is the, what is that?
She can give us her 2 weeks.
She could give her 2 weeks.
And maybe we were thinking about renewing it.
The notice provisions would not apply anymore, so she could give a shorter notice period.
Why don't you do this? It just reverts to an at-will arrangement if you don't do something definitive. Mm-hmm. And then you're reminded
by the 6-month date.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even if it's at will, you can re-enter a contract.
That's right.
It doesn't prevent you from executing
Yeah,
any
but that has to be
contract.
fixed.
That language, I mean, and I think that John's original agreement had similar language that if the notice is not provided and the agreement expires, that the manager will continue with both parties, if she's ready, willing, and able, and she'll be paid at the same rate as currently provided. So something to that.
But until when, Chad? It's got it.
No, I think the suggestion that you just said, or I guess Frank said, that it would go at an at-will type circumstance.
Then it's up to council to
Then it's up to
decide.
council. She's without a contract, and we're going to pay her the same amount. But this, was really put in to give both sides the ability of fair notice of what are we going to do in the future.
But it only really arises if someone makes a conscious decision to end it. What you don't want to have is a hard stop termination if you just forget to do anything.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
That would be the worst thing.
That would be the worst.
This to
Yes,
me
Gary.
is almost an irrelevant provision. The reason being that in the contract, we do annual reviews, right? The annual review for the last year will be at the beginning of the 5th year, right? By that time, whoever the council is will know good and well whether or not they want to extend the contract. If they do, they'll deal with it then. If they don't, they'll have a conversation about it then. So this 180 days to me is meaningless.
I think it's courtesy.
And it could
for her.
backfire on us, just like you said, Brett. So why don't we just take it out of there and let the process play out like it should every year at the beginning of the year?
I think it's more of a courtesy to the manager just to
it's-
know.
That's right.
What we're thinking.
I would
take that
rather
out.
add
No.
language
You're
to what happens
misunderstanding.
if you let the date
You're
slide.
misunderstanding what I'm saying. If this manager or any manager is doing a good job and has been with us for 4 years, and we have a 4-year history, and the review happens at the beginning of the 5th year, and everything is going great, I would fully expect that we would want to, and Andrea would want to, extend the contract. And it would be talked about then.
And the reviewing parties would have the contract would address that term. that
Exactly,
provision,
exactly.
Because it's in front of them.
But this provision that we're speaking about really deals with the reverse of that situation. And it's helpful to do that if the reverse of that situation comes up, because it's a courtesy. Then everybody knows what the future holds. But I don't think you want a hard stop default. You want to have an at-will continuation if you just forget to do anything.
Yeah,
Which can happen,
I agree.
Exactly. Which,
because it's moving parts.
that's the solution.
Yeah.
You agree?
Allison, on your Miami-Dade County analogy, does it apply to businesses or real estate investment or both, or don't we know? For example, could you be an investor in a restaurant?
I think it should be, definitely specific to Key Biscayne. That's where I see an obvious, real conflict. I mean, we can discuss if you want the county. I mean, but yeah, I would think anything on Key Biscayne.
So it's a no self-dealing rule, basically.
No self-dealing, but we have had a situation where a family member opened a business here that purchased a business from another and to make their livelihood. And I find that would have been a little draconian not to allow that.
Of course.
Family member is different, right? We're talking about being a principal participant.
I think if you're a husband or a wife and one of them it's marital assets, and you're probably, I think it's a gray area.
What we normally want is just to know what people are doing. We just want to know. So if it's a question of knowledge and consent.
Well, it's without council approval, so then it would have to come before council. I mean, it maybe
I don't know.
seems like you're meddling, but I think it's pretty
I don't have any issue.
relevant, right? If let's say you're married to a real estate investor, she's not, but let's say that someone was, and you're in control of building and zoning.
But would you have the same issue as a council member?
If the point applies to not buying investment property without telling council. The only reason I even brought it up is should it apply if you're going to invest in a pizza parlor or a restaurant or a
And I saw
business.
it more as a,
So you want flexibility. You want people to be able to follow their dreams and exercise free market prerogatives. I think the point is, the reason that this exists at the county is simply so that people know. And if there's a real problem, then you have a chance to sort it out. Right?
So just to be clear, are you agreeing to expand it or just limit it to real estate? I'm unclear.
I would limit it to real estate.
And the only reason I brought it up is if it applies to real estate and it doesn't apply to business investments, does it make sense? But personally, I don't think it's going to be an issue, and I don't really care.
I'm fine with limiting it to real estate.
I'm fine too.
And that's what we discussed too, so it's pre-approved.
Can we call the question?
Okay, and just back on, I'm sorry, just on the other language, Frank, that you're talking about, would it read something like, in the event this agreement expires due to the council's failure to act, an employee is ready, willing, and able to continue her employment as manager, the village agrees to continue providing manager with her regular biweekly salary and benefits as provided herein, and we can say, like 2 months after the expiration if you want, or you could just leave it open.
I'd leave it open, and I think it's self-effectuating. In other words, if you don't affirmatively terminate, then it just continues.
But is that that's what you're referring to, similar language to that? Okay.
Council members, any other discussion items?
I think John should clean out his car.
That's my second skin.
I think we're ready to call the question then.
Are you okay?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is a capital project authorizing
Thank you,
resolution.
Katie.
I apologize.
Can we please consider doing something? Glenn Wallman is coming to speak on the Moscow lighting thing, and Andy's here for the Casa Maccabi. Can we switch them in order so that we can take care of Andy and he can go home?
Yeah,
Council, do we have,
let's do it.
will you allow for that?
Second.
So we will be,
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
please call the item out of order as we.
Sorry. I apologize. What?
We're going to do the easement.
We're going to do F.
Okay.
8F.
A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving and accepting a drainage easement from Casa Maccabi LLC on property located at 14 Harbor Point Drive, providing for implementation and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Do we need to swear in? No? It's not a special.
Do we have anything?
Chad, are you ready to speak to this, or John, or should we bring up Amy?
As to the easement, I think you can bring up Amy. I also think, is Jose here?
Jose's here.
Okay. And Jose can speak from any of the village issues.
Now, let's get into a couple of comments about the details, and then we'll be finished.
Okay.
Casual. Yeah.
Okay, so Amy, please.
Hi, good evening. Amy Huber with the law firm of Shubin and Bass here on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Garcia. We've been working closely with the village attorney's office as well as with Jose and Chris, who's also here. We've been out onto the site, had site visits. The easement is the first step. Once the easement is executed, then the engineers will continue to work together on the specific plan and getting that approved, as well as then implementing the construction. So we've reviewed the easement, we're comfortable with it, and we're prepared to execute.
Okay, thank you. And Jose, a couple questions as to the project, because I'm a little confused, and I know this has been floating around for a while, and it is a problem. But I am concerned with a couple of things that have been raised. One, that the situation got significantly worse when there was a project to underground the utilities, and I know this is a private road. So what do you know, because you do have the institutional knowledge? ¿Qué pasó?
Well, you have to drain the water somewhere, and the existing outfall that at the time was the one that goes through Mr. Garcia's property. So the road was
it pitched even worse, though?
No, but it was pitched so the water won't accumulate in the other ends. But that was done, and it was done hoping to drain the thing through the existing outfall. It's the same thing that we would have done in any other outfalls in the village, except that this one is very small. You know, the pipe is very small.
What's the history of that outfall? Who put it in? Do you know?
No. Don, it was prior to the village.
Prior to the village. And then, Gary, do you want to?
Finish.
My other concern is this is a private road, and so what is the level of, I guess, village responsibility?
It starts off as a private road, but it backfills enough where it becomes part of our public right-of-way. So if it gets bad enough, and I have seen some photographs where it's backed up, it goes beyond the drain.
So there's public right-of-way on that road?
No, I'm saying if we go further down, we end up onto the public right-of-way in some rain instances, especially Kingston.
That road is like an easement. The county didn't take that road because it wasn't wide enough to meet their standards.
So the county did, this
So
was
the county
since the county.
set it up that way, and we have put other utilities through that main easement. The easement we're looking for is now to cross the property, a private property there.
The point of beginning is at the swale, right?
Pardon?
The point of beginning is at the swale. I mean, there's not an issue about.
Well, no, but it's got to be up all the way up to whatever, Matheson. Is it Matheson?
It connects right at the road.
Right.
It connects right at the road.
So it goes all the way up to Matheson?
No, from the road, it crosses through the private property into the bay.
You mean the easement or the alleviation of water that the larger outfall will provide for? Is that what you mean?
No, because I didn't understand what you said.
I'm confused.
Okay,
Can I ask one question?
please.
To hopefully clarify this.
Yes.
I think because this is a private road, the only way we can deal with it is if by the condition it's in, it negatively impacts public roads and other properties. So the question I have is this condition bad enough that it does negatively impact other residences and private and public properties? And if we do what's being requested, will that alleviate the problem that exists for public roads and other properties?
Yes, and this is a permitted outfall under our MPDS program. So it's officially ours.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we need the right to go in and do work in the private property.
And it's my understanding this is the last one that's this old and this small, right? Of all the outfalls that we have, this is the only one that's...
This is the smallest, yes. We don't have anything like this.
And you have a plan in mind that's going to drain the heck out of the water? You know what?
It's going to
You know, we have to deal with whatever level of the bay is.
Fair
you
enough.
know, so
Does it currently have a backflow preventer, or is it too small?
We will put a
You will put
backflow
one?
preventer.
It doesn't have it now.
It doesn't have it.
They don't make them that small?
Well, it sounds like we're going to change the pipe and make a much larger outfall is,
Yeah,
sense
we are
I'm getting.
planning to abandon the existing outfall because
and
we
create a
don't
new
want to,
one.
we don't want to even deal with any mangroves at the end of the outfall
That's
or
true.
anything, so.
Thank you. And thank you for asking the right question, which got to my issue.
Jose, I think it's important that you explain that there's a ramp there at the house, so that there's no, in the property, there's an actual ramp, and that's where it would go. There would be no mangroves in the way there now.
Yeah,
And we don't want to
the
have,
relocation hopefully will be better and larger.
okay,
So-
thank you. Well, that's very helpful. I just
Myra.
wanted to get that. Yes, Brett.
Quick question. From my understanding, this has been in the budget. We've had this budgeted to do this project. Do we know, what's the amount that we have there that we're looking at?
I can have it by tomorrow.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure, but it is budgeted and we have it there. Okay.
Again, if I just may too, because I've been with this for a long time, this had been
Mr. Garcia,
approved.
you have to come up to the podium because we have to record
Just to
you.
say, that this had been approved and budgeted, but there was a problem with the previous councils.
But this is a whole new crew,
I know.
so we
But I
have to
mean, if
kinda-
We had approved it, and then we couldn't get the easement, and then it got basically delayed, and here we are again.
I understand. Thank you.
Yes, Allison. Okay, well, I think we got a lot of questions answered, and if you could please call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is a capital project authorizing resolution
Thank you.
of the Village Council of the Village of Key
Hors
Biscayne.
d'oeuvres at my house,
Of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving Moscow Sports Lighting LLC for the purchase and installation of a lighting system at Key Biscayne K-8 Center, providing for authorization, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Well,
Do we need Glenn?
I am waiting.
Glenn's
I
not here.
thought-
Right.
Not yet.
Todd, we don't have it? No. You want to do this solo?
Can we
There's
move
another
the
item that
next,
we
can
can-
we move the next
Yeah,
to the
there's
next
another.
item?
May I
Roll it
have a
over.
motion to table this
Moved.
item, please?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to issue a work order to EAC Consulting, Inc. for design, environmental, permitting, procurement support, and construction support services relating to the kiteboard channels, marker buoys, and providing for an effective date.
Move. Second.
Mayor and council has recommended that the village council approve the attached resolution for design, environmental permitting, procurement support, and construction support not to exceed $57,605. If you get deep enough into the EAC contract, there's a place on page 2 at the top with a Roman numeral, small 4, that talks about permitted meetings. I was able to, through a conversation with Tim, get the price of this work order down from $57,605 down to $55,000. The large number that you have regarding the permit applications, according to Tim, it's become more expensive to pull permits, and there are more entities that have to get involved in the permitting process. He feels that this is a fair number. I feel that this is a fair presentation, and I ask for your support.
How many buoys?
I can't
do we
believe
put
that it
out there?
costs $57,000.
We're talking about 2 orange floating devices.
Wow.
This is amazing.
2 orange floating devices.
Are you serious? I thought you were saying
That-
12 or
that-
something.
That is just absurd to me. I mean, you know.
Well, I'm not questioning our vendor, and like I say, I've got an explanation. If you'd like us to go back to the drawing board and discuss it.
This causes us to question the deep regulatory state, not our vendor.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a lot of permitting.
I would like to say that, but I'm not sure how this is going.
Yeah. What was the cost on the Nixon Beach?
It was like-
That was a more extensive project, just by comparison.
But
Is it
remember,
in the-
we did,
Nixon Beach wasn't. The Mashta project with all of the creosote poles around it was a much larger project. We spent around $30,000 to $40,000 on the, what I'm calling Alvarez Beach, but it's the Nixon Beach.
See, because
No swim zone.
Okay, so
we're going to want to do this, but this,
$15,000 for just design and engineering of how many?
Of 2 buoys.
Of 2 buoys. It just,
it does kind of shock
it
me.
boggles my imagination. You know, and then we have $33,000 for permitting for just the applications are 7,620 and 26,000 for the processing of the applications. I just can't see it. I mean,
It seems fictional.
And what kind of
without more investigation, I can't possibly.
And construction support services, I guess that's
3,895 for construction support services of 2 buoys.
But that's for the environmental or something.
Yeah, I mean, when they come out there, it's not like they just throw these in the water and go down and put a weight at the bottom of them. The mechanism in place to keep the Nixon buoys was extensive, and at one point we lost one. So there is.
It's like building a mooring field.
It's just, the permitting and all the.
Can we put more than 2 buoys in? Can we put more than 2 buoys
To get our
in?
money's worth?
Yeah.
And some signage?
A bunch of them in, we can make light shows.
Because we like signage.
This is not even for the actual buoys themselves. This is just
just
professional
the drawings.
fees.
But here's a problem, colleagues. Here's a problem. John has reported to us that he's fly-spec'd this. He's talked to a good vendor, a vendor that we know. If this is what this project is going to cost, we need to do the project.
Yep.
So what are we going to learn that we don't already know, except that this is shockingly expensive?
Well, and that our permits are going to go to help defray the cost of this, and when people balk at the permitting, that's what it's for.
I've been questioned about the registration fee. And I've said to the council, and I've spoken to people that have come to me about this, that there's a lot of startup costs involved in this, and there's no reason why that money should go toward recovering these costs.
I agree.
How necessary is it to approve tonight? I mean, I know that we have a summer coming, and we're not going to meet until the end of August, but could this wait? Could we get, maybe some negotiation going or something, and bring it back in August and see where we are? I mean,
there's no loss to that because no one's signed up for the permits yet. No one's asked for the very first streamer. So I don't know whether the weather's going to change throughout the summer.
Yeah.
Police department knows what to do regarding the safety aspect within that 100 yards on the beach itself, so we don't get people hurt.
Yeah. I just feel that there's some people uncomfortable right now. Maybe.
What are you looking for me to bring back in August?
A smaller number.
Smaller.
Okay, that's fair. All right.
Well, and they told us the season starts in October. So waiting a little bit, I mean, the question is just from here until installation, how long is that? If we want to really be up and running safely at the start of the season in October.
Because this is just the drawings.
You guys remember, though, this is part of actually putting our policy in place. So right now, what we have is we have an area that kiteboarders are using. They're not registering with the village. It sounds like they've been pretty compliant with going into that area. And we don't have buoys. So are we committing ourselves to putting this in place and making sure that we have registrations and following through with everything we stated?
I'm reminded that this is a 5 to 6 month project anyway. The number that we have on here is not to exceed, and I will continue working with the group doing the permitting, Tim and Moffitt and McNichols, to see if there's any savings along the way.
Yes.
I have
Gary.
A request. I hate to keep second guessing these things, and I'm really not second guessing it, but my understanding of what's involved in 2 buoys is putting a 100-pound block of concrete down for each one, tying the buoy to it and a line. And that's how these buoys are installed.
I'm not sure. The ones that were done at the Nixon Beach were not done that way, but they're a different buoying system. They're not the orange, they're the upright ones, so it would take something different.
And what I'm asking is, and I'm glad you said that, John, maybe we don't need to do that same kind of a buoy for this particular channel. Maybe the resolution of this is something as simple as I just said. You drop a piece of concrete down, you embed the line in it, and you attach the line to the buoy on the other end. I mean, that's a pretty common way of installing very simple marking buoys. I don't know whether this needs to be more elaborate or not, but it would accomplish what we need to do. And it's inconceivable to me that if we could do that, it wouldn't be nearly as involved in the planning stage. That's my question.
You've got seagrass issues out there. And you do have layers of permitting. That is even as simple as it is. And
I know that. I
maybe to
understand.
pay a couple key rats to do it themselves, but.
Maybe the first kiteboarder on site each day goes and puts a marker out there temporarily, and they pull them in at the end.
Let me look at the buoying system, and I'll get back to you. I'll send you an email, because I don't want to wait the entire summer, but let me look into the buoying system.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion?
So what do
to
we
bring this
do
back?
tonight? Because if we do, see, if we come back in August, nothing will have happened in the meantime to render this more clear than it is now, probably.
6 months out.
And you're 6 months out to do the project.
I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm okay to wait till August.
I am too.
And have them come back.
there-
I'll make the motion that we bring it back in August with either another system or work with our consultant to see how we can, work with the price to make sure that it's a little bit more reasonable for 2 buoys. I don't see that this is an emergency that we have to, vote on this tonight. So that would be my motion.
I caution the council. We're on the hook. Okay, we're on the record. We've done what we've done. We've told kiters this is the area that's going to be in. They have been cooperative. They may have had some additional ideas that need to be vetting, and now we're going to postpone until early next year getting these buoys in there. So I hate to be the one to say it on the record, but I must notify the council
But I don't think we're postponing just to postpone. I think we have a reason to bring this back. I mean, I think it's a legitimate reason.
And the reason for bringing this back is because the number seems high.
Exactly.
But if it's a not to exceed and John explores alternative technologies, say, drop a weight, would you feel differently if he were able to find another way to accomplish this and under a not to exceed contract, bring back however cheap he can make it come out?
Allison, did you want to add to this?
This is a totally different idea, but for almost $60,000, there has to be a way to even have like a temporary buoy system that could cost us less, where a daily, either someone from the Key Biscayne Kiteboarding Association or even a village employee would put them. We have certain days and times that you're allowed to do it. Maybe we put the buoys out and take them in.
Why?
Because it's a lot of money.
But if I'm taking buoys out and in, I'm still coming up with permitting.
No, really? If I go out with my paddleboard and throw down temporary anchor and pull it
The
up.
first time we turn somebody back because they didn't have a streamer, they're going to be pointing out fingers and pointing and doing anything that they can to make it seem as though they're right and we're wrong. I don't know that bouncing, dancing buoys is the answer. I'm looking at different buoys, but.
Okay, so we're in where we are because there is no competition with respect to the price of the contract.
Or the
Is
price
there
of
anything that we
permitting.
can do about that?
It's really the price of
It's a permitting.
It's the permitting that they just.
Well, I mean, they're telling us that is the permitting because they have to do
Process
the
it.
permitting process. That's not the cost of actual paying the permit.
So this is a CCNA contract, so you guys could go out and bid for qualifications again and qualify firms for this and then negotiate the best
But
price.
we have other firms that are qualified, don't we?
Correct, but under our continuing services agreements in the law, you can't bid those people against each other.
Okay.
You can go back to EAC or Moffitt and Nickel through EAC and say, we think your bid is high. You need to, try to value engineer that
Or
down.
we'll go out to
Or
bid.
you'll go out to bid.
I think $15,000 of this is clearly reducible.
Okay, but we're still on this issue that I'm concerned about. Can't we go to the next consultant that we have?
We've just bled all over the place by giving out our numbers for the first one, so we can go to the second and the third and see what kind of numbers they produce.
You can go to the next one, but you can't bid them against each other. So you can't say, whoever the next person is, can you beat this number?
By the way, this doesn't include surveying services.
I
Guys,
continue
we're
my
gonna
motion
have
if
Gary's
anybody wants to
raising his
second it.
hand.
John, I have a question, and
have a motion on the
I
floor.
love consultants. I used to be one. But we're talking about sinking 2 simple buoys. Can't we find a company that does this kind of work and just say to them, we want you to have 2 buoys to mark this channel. Give us the cost of doing it and go pull the permits. where's the engineering involved in this? Where's $15,000 worth of engineering? I just don't get it. I mean, can't we just find a company and say, here's what we want you to do, now go get the permits and do it?
I thought that's what we were doing, but we can go look for more.
Well, no,
Cheaper.
But you went to the engineers and you asked them.
Went to who we've used every time in the past.
No,
Yes,
no,
sir.
but-
Yes, sir, you're correct. We went to
Right,
the
right.
engineers.
So what he's saying is
We didn't go to the common businessman who's got a Class D license to run a flatbed boat and can stop a little bit offshore, drop down, put these things. No, we did not do that.
I'm
Now,
not.
I know that exists.
That's not what he's saying.
I'm
I
not
know
talking
that
Class
exists
D.
because we looked at that over at the Nixon Beach for those cylinder type things.
Okay.
Maybe
I'm the only one that thinks it's ridiculous.
I still got the motion on the table, guys. So my motion is still on the table. Anybody wants to second it?
But Gary's suggestion, this is what that says.
Renegotiate.
This says that. It says what, this says,
This
go
is,
find a way to put 2 buoys down.
Right.
And this is their methodology to accomplish that.
Yeah, but you went to the engineers. If you go to the company that's going to accomplish the buoys, they may have their own engineers that will accomplish this in a different way.
Yeah, so what you're suggesting is to go to the contractor
Yes.
first, as opposed to the engineer.
Absolutely.
Because this is such an incredibly simple project, yes. I mean, normally I would say, yeah, let's design it, but what is there to design? Go to the company and say, we need 2
go to what
buoys.
company? Just a company and see what they would
The
charge.
contractor.
Yeah.
And as far as permitting goes, if we send them out to permitting and the permits come back like this, do I continue doing that, or do I say, the permits are costing us the same amount of money no matter who's doing it?
Well, bring it back to us in
My
August
concern
and
would
let's see
be
it.
that, does the buoy guy even know how to do the permitting part?
Yeah.
But this presupposes something that I don't know. Is there a
This would be
contract?
company that does this kind of thing.
Somebody's got to do it.
They're not going to do the work.
You're talking about a design build. Is it relevant? Because is there a contractor that makes and manufactures and installs buoys? I
Well,
don't.
other people have these installed.
somebody's
Maybe
gonna have
they
to do it.
use,
You've
right?
seen these no
Bill
swim
Baggs has
zones.
them.
I have to,
But one thing we know that they have to do is survey work, because they have to establish a channel.
Correct.
And then they have to do
Survey's already been
permitting.
done.
The survey's been done.
They have to do permitting because there's seagrass, and you can't lodge something in the ocean bottom without doing that. So their permitting costs here are very specific. They're either wrong or they're right, but I would expect they know what.
I have a question for all of you that have dealt with this in the past. Are these numbers inconsistent with what you've had to do when you have delineated things in the water
Yes.
previously?
I think these are higher.
What did you quote, that
30,000.
30,000 for the other,
for the ones over by the Alvarez House, Nixon Beach.
which I thought was
And I can't.
similar.
And, yeah, and I can't use Master Flats because we use Creole.
Yes.
So 30,000, and so it's almost double.
And how many buoys were put in for 30,000?
Less than 3.
Yeah.
Chuck was 3?
Less than 3.
Yeah, I was trying to get to the 2 mark, but no. I was in the 2 when we're putting in.
Between 1 and 3.
It was 3, I believe.
So we do have even the vendor who we use to actually put the buoys.
I was going to say, there are companies out, they didn't do the permitting, but that company came out with the flat, they did the things, they augured them in, I know that there are people that do it.
Just, quote us and the cheapest, fastest way to get permitted buoys out there from the vendor.
The $30,000 ones, those are the ones you're talking about, but the swimming
Yeah.
exclusion,
They were
right?
called-
30,000 was for nuts to bolts?
I can't believe it.
I don't remember every detail of that. I was more focused on Master Flats. And we did use permitting from one company, and the same person that was doing some work over at the yacht club was the one that actually put those buoys in.
Yeah.
Dug something or something like that. I don't remember.
And that included survey.
And that was already done.
Yeah.
Well, we already had, survey was separate.
Yeah.
The survey to depict
Correct,
that was done?
yes.
Separately.
Separately.
And then the permits, and then the actual construction of.
What
we
about
get
the
past this?
idea, what about the idea? Okay, what about the idea of using that as our template of pricing and to see if the manager can
I think
meet
it's a
that
good
pricing
So
and go back?
Yes.
Are you okay with
I'm
that?
good with that.
So one question is, do you go back to whatever this company is called now, Tim, and do that, or do you go to market?
Seems like I'm getting direction from more of the council than many that they want the people doing it, the feet in the
I just
water.
feel this,
Might
I'm,
be more reasonable price.
I would like a not to exceed number from whoever the heck does it.
Isn't there a motion pending?
Motion.
I don't have a
Nobody
second.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
But I think it's
wanna
going to take a
stall.
long time if we go to market.
Can I have 30 seconds tomorrow night?
Yes.
Okay, give me
Please,
30.
that's perfect.
I'm making a phone call. or
Can
two.
we move to table this item till tomorrow?
Let's do it.
Do we have to get
We're
rid of the
not,
motion
we're
that's on
not,
the table
but
first?
tomorrow night, well, we do have the executive session. I guess we could add it to that agenda and we'll.
It's a
before-
workshop.
No, but we have an executive session first, which is at a
Yes.
public meeting, so we could basically
Yeah.
have this one item, deal with it, and then we'll open the executive
But it
session.
can't be in the exhibit.
No, we do it before.
The executive session has to be held at a public meeting. That's why when, Jenny will read it and say, we're opening this up, and then
Yes.
we'll say,
I'm
we're
not-
closing the public meeting.
But I already
And then-
announced, you already announced it. I'm not opening it and closing it.
No, you are,
No,
because
you
to
are.
establish the executive session,
you
you have
have
to
to.
start with the public.
It's-
I
a
usually
public
read
meeting.
it. I read it. I made
So-
I'd say everybody, that's.
There'll be a public meeting. Everybody will be in order. The first item will be to close the public meeting, to start the executive session. Instead of doing that, we'll do an item before we close the public meeting.
Correct, correct.
Give me 24 hours.
Or make your phone call and we'll.
What she's
pay
saying
for
is
it
that
before
it
you
hasn't
get in
been
there.
noticed.
But anybody who has an
But it's,
interest would be here
it's
tonight.
noticed tonight, and
So
we
you
can carry.
you defer it to a date certain of
Right.
tomorrow.
All right, so I
So
have to
do we
reach,
have consensus
I
to,
guess,
let me
By the way,
retract.
by the way,
Withdraw
that's just if you're going to take formal action. If you just want to discuss it tomorrow, I mean, you can do that too.
But we would only
I'd
do
like to
this
take
to,
formal action
yeah.
because I recognize that we have a time constraint and we have to comply with, there's no way of moving forward with the implementation of the ordinance if we don't take this step.
I will withdraw my motion then. If
So
you-
move to table this till tomorrow night before the executive session.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Glenn's back.
Are we ready to proceed with,
Yes, we are. We have
Great.
Mr. Waldman is here.
okay. A capital project authorizing resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving Moscow Sports Lighting LLC for the purchase and installation of a lighting system at Key Biscayne K-8 Center, providing for authorization, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Mouthful.
Second.
Glenn Waldman, 240 Woodcrest Road. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm here, what we were talking about last time in terms of lights for the school. We have Jason Frucht of Musco here. You had asked that he come. If there's any questions, he's here to answer any questions that anybody may have. And we're here obviously to implore you to pass this so that we can proceed. We're already in discussions with the county to proceed forward. And we have, I think, a contract with Musco that will last a year. If it doesn't get done, obviously we can do a new one, and we're ready to roll.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to have any questions for Jason or anybody have any questions for?
My question, I guess, is to you or either Todd.
Sure.
Has the school signed off on this? The school district?
Not yet's the answer, but
We're coordinating a meeting now to review all the documents with them.
Okay, so
With their
this
staff,
is,
the person that we've worked with on all the other projects was gone for 2 weeks on vacation. So we've been a little delayed, but we'll pick up speed and
so this would be pending, obviously, approval.
absolutely.
And the prices are guaranteed for a year.
And so,
yes.
Does Musco do buoys?
Well, I'll talk to him after the meeting.
possibly some lasers. that
Listen,
go
I'm
on.
going to start doing buoys after today.
So let's.
Any other questions?
No,
The
call the
big
question,
thing for me
please.
was wanting to have them here in case there were questions from neighbors. I personally have not heard anything from anyone. I don't know if anyone else has.
I have not.
I haven't, but did we, I know that our last discussion, we suggested that the neighbors be contacted. Has that taken place?
Not directly, but it was almost immediately in the online edition of the Islander News and then in the print edition.
Perfect, okay, so at least.
Well, I
there's-
heard exactly one comment, which was gratitude for expressing the technology and the cone being more circumscribed, and that was from somebody that lives on Glen Ridge, I believe.
Okay, good. Well, then I think I'm ready to vote. I don't know how
Let's
you
go.
all are. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks, Glenn.
Next item, reports and recommendations, mayor and council members, reappointment of special magistrates, Mayor Lindsay.
Yes, I would like to appoint Augusto Granado. Thank you. No, it's not.
Is it the consensus of council?
Council, would you, yeah, I'm gonna,
Yes,
thank you.
let's hope that they have very little to do.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Next item, Crandon Tennis Park proposal, Mayor Lindsay.
Yes. As you all know, we have been meeting with Miami-Dade County for the last 8 or 9 months on what they deemed as an alternate route when we were discussing other possible projects on Crandon Park, the whole beach site. At the time that these meetings were initiated by the county, there was ongoing discussions whether tennis would be in fact leaving or not. And the Parks and Rec Department and other departments in Miami-Dade County were trying to figure out what would happen at the tennis tournament and what kind of programming should go on there. As you all know, it is both a heritage park and a regional park. Both of these type of classifications have different roles. The regional park aspect, or excuse me, the heritage park aspect of Crandon is mostly east of the Crandon Boulevard, and those are the historical and environmental components. But we have a situation with the tennis center that is all disturbed lands, and they just want to make sure that there is programming that they can fill the gaps for the need of Miami-Dade community. So after probably 6 meetings with the county, on-site review of the whole entire park with the director of parks, and a meeting, and I think Todd is here, to kind of, get their idea as to what they were focusing on after planning for about 6 months. They went from wanting to tear down the stadium to now my understanding is that the stadium will stay there as is. They are looking to have high school and college tennis tournaments on the premises. They may look for a second-tier tournament, but they'd have every intention for now of keeping that stadium. They also find that there's tremendous need for courts countywide. Those courts are used a lot. So they wanted, the instructions that we got is they're interested, they understand that there's a real need for more playing fields, but they want to keep the site as a primary tennis facility with supplemental playing fields for kids. They do not want it to be a primary site. They do not want it to become a soccer park like they have out west because it changes the dynamics completely of the use of the park. But they invited us to suggest up to 3 playing fields on the site, providing that they would have minimal impacts with the tennis courts as they are right now. Todd put together 3 different diagrams, and I believe they are here, and showed them to the parks. And as of right now, the parks director and her staff are looking for kind of a final, whether approving this or with slight modifications. And the idea is to work together with our neighbors, with our county, and see if we could put up to 3 playing fields on the premises. This is contemplated according to many. It is contemplated as part of the master plan because there's always been a contemplation of having multi-use playing fields on the park. So this is disturbed. This is something that there's an opportunity now. And there seems to be not only real interest, but a sense of urgency. So I just wanted to bring this up to you as a possibility and a good possibility and discuss next steps where you all would like to go for this. And I know that this has been a collective effort by so many people at so many different junctures. I mean, starting 30 years ago, but it's an opportunity that we have right now, and I'm going to ask Allison to speak, and then Luis de la Cruz, and then Frank. Yes.
Well, actually, Lucho maybe will touch on this. I think this would be very exciting if this goes through. Obviously, it's something we all want. I'm curious how this interplays with anything that Lucho's been doing. Have you guys been kind of working on this or have you?
So
how's that going?
I believe I met with everyone about 6 months ago, if not longer, 9 months ago, because I had been approached by the council to come up to discuss an alternate route, an alternate plan. This is what came from those discussions. I know that Luis was working on a, always with the same goal, but on a different route with a different set of facts and different characters. And I think that came somewhat to its end to a certain extent. At least that's what I've been told, that there was just not a meeting of the minds at the end. So this continued moving along as that kind of simmered a little bit. I know that what was being contemplated before, there was activity both on the east side and the west side. I think what's different here is this is based on the principles and the parameters that the county set as to things that they would be interested in working. So they're kind of, it was initiated from that respect and in keeping with everything else that they're looking for in the park.
Okay, so I'm sorry, are you done, Allison?
Yep.
Okay. I'm not going to get confrontational about this with you because we all know what's going on here. But almost to the year today, this council passed a civility resolution that we all discussed at length, and it wasn't easy. But that civility resolution applies to the mayor as much as it applies to every other council member on this dais. And so all of us here, and including all of those people that I have worked for the last 2 years, almost on a daily basis, trying to get something going at Crandon, would like for something to happen. And so I'm not going to say, no, of course not, you can't do that because you're not coming with us or whatever. That's not where it is. The bottom line is that if you had some ideas, you should have known, because we had a meeting where this council also appointed me as the person to negotiate a certain contract with certain people. And that's what we were doing. And Gene's not here, but he'll be happy to come and explain exactly what his position is on the matter. And people like Gene Stearns and Melissa and me, and we're really putting a whole lot of time and effort into this for you to go rogue on your own and meet with the people that we're not meeting with and pull the rug from under us in the middle of our negotiations. That is just not the way that we should do things up here at this dais. We should be working together for the benefit of the village of Key Biscayne, okay? And I can't tell you how upset this makes me, but you know what? I'm a big boy. Forget about me. Think about the residents of the village of Key Biscayne who are helping us in this particular endeavor. And the fact that you basically decided to go on your own and speak to the people that we were not speaking with and try to make a deal with them while we were still working on this, and we still are. And I spoke to Gene today, and he's been speaking with Mayor Jimenez as of today. And so there are things that are, that are still out there that may or may not happen. The bottom line is this. Let's go and do whatever we can do. If this works out, I am all in favor for it because, we put together a presentation called the Grandin Park Partnership, which I think you appropriated the name. And that particular presentation showed where we were going to look for fields, not necessarily on the east side. We were trying to do everything on the west side and particularly in the tennis area. And then we lost the baseball fields. So the same people that we're going to go to and ask for an amendment from are the people that took away our baseball fields. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and try it out and find out at the end of the day whether or not it is a possibility. I'm all for getting fields for the village of Key Biscayne, for the kids and for the adults of the village of Key Biscayne, and for the rest of the Miami-Dade County, because those fields would never be just for us. We would finance them, we would run them, and it would cost us the money, but we would be doing it for all of Miami-Dade County, where we have 13,000 residents of Miami-Dade County here in Key Biscayne. So that's all I can say about it,
Wait, Frank is going to speak, and then I'm going to have you. Yes, Frank.
Katie, you want to, I'll defer to you, Katie.
I just wanted to ask you, Luis, these playing fields that could potentially go in here, if they were to happen, would they in any way undermine the direction that you've been taking?
Theoretically, no.
Okay.
First of all, I would love to do it this way with an amendment coming from the amendment committee. If that would work out, we always discuss that as a potential way of doing things, So we could go and we could try and we can,
These aren't enough fields.
They're not enough.
Of our desire, particularly if we have in fact lost the baseball fields.
Correct. They would just replace the baseball fields and add one more field, basically.
And I understand your frustration, having worked very long and hard on a completely different path. This is sitting before us right now. I would like to know, and maybe in your research, you found out what could we do with these fields and these sizes? And Todd, have you investigated that also?
Todd, if you could please come up. And just so that you all know, these were the parameters that were given to us by conversations initiated by the county. And again, the 3 fields is what was.
What are you looking for?
There's only 3
the
parties.
Balance, because they want supplemental.
There's only 3 parties. It's Miami-Dade County, the Matheson family, and the village of Key Biscayne.
And what gives, you can speak to the fields.
So when you say the center is not
Okay.
So let's find out about the fields first.
Let's
what
talk
could
about.
we do with these 3 fields? Because they're all different sizes.
They are all different sizes, yes. And what we try to do is design fields that impacted the facility as little as possible. Used some areas that, now that the tournament's gone, won't be important to them, like the extra parking, like the vending area where they have all the food concessions during the tournament, and would still allow them to operate the tennis center, the facility as they do now. Field 1, I guess you could correlate to a Village Green North. Field 2 is a Village Green South, everything full size.
Is it big enough for rugby?
We could probably get it to be big enough for rugby, yes. And then we're back to a little bit bigger than a Village Green North again.
And what about baseball?
For our younger divisions, you could definitely play baseball. And then you would just have to prioritize our older divisions and softball at our baseball diamond here. Right now, our coach pitch on down plays on, St. Agnes.
But Mustang and softball?
Yeah, Mustang and softball would be.
None of those fields would apply for them?
We'd have to see what we could lay out and what kind of radius we can get in the outfield. We might be able to, if we could get, temporary, like we've done in the past on the Village Green. We've done the Cincinnati Diamonds, if you recall, in the past, where we just cut out pitcher's mounds, the three bases. We've done a bunch of different,
But those,
maximizing
but
any
that-
space.
That was T-ball.
That was T-ball,
Yeah.
right, that was Village Green.
That's not what she's talking about.
But the Mustangs and softball already are only at the Cave, is that right?
That's correct.
So that's not a
As of
change.
this year, because
of this
they
year.
were able to use Crandon Park. So then, my next question to you is, has there been a discussion, why would the things that have kept us from being able to keep that baseball park open, and why do you think that we're not going to get stopped trying to take and put playing fields here? By the Crandon Park Master Plan.
Because the Crandon Park Master Plan allows for the fields, but the settlement agreement,
yes,
it said that those specific baseball fields needed to be removed and the lighting removed on the east side. They contemplate for fields within the park, and we have, just like we have multi-purpose courts at Calusa, they believe that multi-purpose fields in a place that has disturbed lands.
Can you explain who they are so we know who it is they?
Sure. Mayor Jimenez and Maria Nardi, the Director of Parks and Recreation.
Mayor Jimenez believes that.
Todd, did you get a sense that that's what
That's what he said in our meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so what's
or at
on,
least
what's
that
on the
it's
table
definitely
tonight?
So
is-
what's on the table tonight is we would like to pursue this. We would like to go to the Miami-Dade Commission, to the Miami-Dade Mayor, with a proposal for 3 playing fields within that footprint of the tennis center. And we would have to, in order to do that, get renderings for that site and get a cost projection. And so that is what we need to do during our hiatus, is instruct the manager to obtain both of those items with the help of Todd and a consultant, an engineer.
And Luis,
Yes, ma'am.
what are your thoughts on that?
I think we should go for it.
One question.
Yes, Gary.
I absolutely think we should go for it, but I have a similar question, maybe the same one that Katie just asked, and I'm not sure I understand the answer. Since this clearly is something that requires an agreement by 3 parties, and one of those 3 parties is directly responsible for tearing the fields that already exist down, why would they then agree to allow us to build fields that aren't even there at this point? I don't understand that.
My understanding is that the master plan allows for multi-purpose fields. In fact, its mission includes playing fields for children. So this is, in this location, there's a feeling that it's much more palatable.
The master plan requires an amendment in order to do this, just like anything else there, because right now there is no fields at the tennis stadium. And as a matter of fact, the master plan requires that the stadium be torn down. And that's something that, again, I don't understand how Miami-Dade is thinking, because, Mr. Matheson, who controls the master plan amendment committee, would have to be required to change the master plan in order not to have the tennis stadium torn down. So all that, it has to happen.
So at the end of the day, we are in a situation where we are making a very reasonable ask. It's something that is reasonable. It is again, supplemental fields. It's not primary fields. It's not going to be, a business academy. It is for the recreational use of children in Miami-Dade County. It is something that is needed by both Key Biscayne and Miami-Dade County. It is something that is in keeping with the vision of the park, and so it's a reasonable ask. I feel that it's reasonable enough for the commission to approve, and I feel that it's reasonable enough for the Crandon Committee to approve also. And if not, we should know now, because we've never made this type of ask before, and we should know. We need to get to that point instead of, being too scared to ask because we think, and so with this footprint, with the parameters of what we're trying to do, it's a thoughtful, kind of responsible ask, and as thoughtful as, we can get it to be.
I think totally we should go for it and
Okay.
take it to the next step. We have nothing to lose.
We have nothing to lose. Yes, Alice.
I have a couple of things, but just talk only about this idea of the fields and the project for the summer of spending money on renderings and engineering or whatever it is. Is there a reason to go ahead spending that money and doing this plan without first feeling out the third party that we're all worried about?
I believe that the process is we go in front of the Miami-Dade Commission and they approve it, and then they're the ones that present it to if it needs to go in front of the board, they're the ones that present it, we don't.
And have the waters been tested even, unofficially? Like, what is the feeling of the reception of this before we go and spend?
I think based on the different meetings and conversations I've had within the last 9 months, and Todd was at the last one, there is a real desire to pursue this, and I think that's testing the waters enough for me, because there's a real,
Except it's on our dime, right? So I get wanting to pursue it. My question, I think, more is, have there been any conversations, even just sort of peripherally, with the third party?
I mean, can we present the desire without the renderings is the big question.
Yes, that's what I was.
Well, do you think, don't we need to know what we're getting ourselves into to a certain extent?
We know, more
We
or less.
do.
We have a good
Well,
idea of
remember,
what the field will cost.
With the drainage in the spot, listen, if you guys want to do it on a paper napkin with the help of Todd and the people, that's fine.
I can't imagine
need
the
direction
commission not
from you
liking
all.
the idea of us paying for fields on land that they're not using for the county to use, right?
I don't think, I agree with you, but I just, I like to know what I'm getting myself into, but we can do it as a preliminary and make that offer to the county, and then if there's a will, we sharpen our pencils. That's fine too. This is a discussion, and it's for, guidance from you all and Brett.
Frank, I'll keep it short because I think you're waiting to speak. My only question looking at this is that field number 1, I'm just not sure why it's so small. It would be better to have larger fields if we're looking at it. I will defer this over to Councilmember De La Cruz because he's been working on it. So if he says to do this and how to do it, I'll follow that.
I think, I don't want to talk about process right now, but I think that what's happened, this has always been a rather galling situation. The situation involving the softball fields is, in my opinion, completely arbitrary and punitive, and really nothing other than a gotcha moment. And I think we've always been properly pissed about it. I think to mention that because we should try to follow this lead, because the loss of the tennis tournament has, I think, engendered so much anger at the county, and so much of a recognition of what has been lost after this, the referendum so strongly supported the tournament and the improvement of the stadium, and the lunacy and futility of what's happened as a result of this amendment committee, I think has changed the attitude at the Miami-Dade County. Number one. And number two, the uselessness of this large facility with all of that asphalt and all of that infrastructure is perceptibly, it's not sufficiently useful. I wouldn't say useless, because it is used, but it's not adequately used and it's not pervasively enough used. So if we don't recognize this as an opportunity,
Exactly.
we're just blind. I want, if we're going to do this, though, let's not be too timid in our asks. Let's go for it. And maybe let's go for it in a sequenced manner, the second sequence of which would be to include the east side, because there's some very good ideas that we've been presenting for years, but you start with what's achievable, because sometimes Hail Marys blow the whole play. But let's not forget, for example, the easement to get down there by ability to walk. Let's not forget the, the boardwalk feature through the mangrove, which Bruce ought to like because it's ecologically beautiful and takes an area that is now only a visual experience as you're driving at 55 miles an hour to the mainland and actually would make it an area of accessibility and interest. It also occurs to me to remember that in prior days, before the tournament, there was a kayak and canoe facility that enabled you to get right out to the bay from that site. So,
And Frank, I think all of that is being contemplated, actually. I think today's ask is exactly that, what is achievable and what is kind of the low-lying fruit. But everything you've mentioned, including the east side, of course. But let's get the ball rolling. Let's take this baby step.
I think that our effectiveness at the county commission will not be impaired or aided. In other words, it'll be neutral if we had renderings or if we didn't have renderings, because the scope of this project is sufficiently clear to everybody, and the desirability of it is sufficiently clear to everybody. So
next step, and I think we'll work on renderings. We'll make bigger fields, point well taken. We'll sharpen our pencils and do some estimates based on what has been done here on the village and looked at different sites, and I'll circulate a letter to everyone.
So the one thing in the little write-up, the memo, that might be a detail that we don't want it to get ahead of us, has to do with scheduling. The observation that the county population on the Brickell side has grown is obviously correct. But we need, if we're going to invest in this, we know what our needs are, and we're going to need to remember scheduling priorities for our people. Mm-hmm. So if that gets degraded, we're going to be unhappy with the result.
But what I was trying to get at, and again, I think this is a fabulous opportunity, but I really want to see a three-party buy-in before we start paying money. I am very concerned, based upon 40 years of history, that we're going to start spending money to present a plan that's only going to get shot down in the end, like it has so many times in the past. And I don't think that it would be too difficult to get a three-party buy-in to the concept, obviously pending details, to the concept, and then full speed ahead. But if we're going to run into a roadblock after spending money, the same roadblock we run into for years and years, I think that wouldn't be a good situation.
Well, let's put together some good numbers just internally, put together good renderings internally, make the ask, get it in front of the commission, take the next step if it goes in front of, and then that's when but I think we need to know that, have a ballpark figure for us, for this community and for the commission to know what our investment is. We need to have a ballpark figure, how we get there, and we'll circulate the methodology.
Okay.
We need to circulate the ask.
Of course.
And we need to have full buy-in on the ask, because you only ask once. I also think, I don't want to talk about process particularly, but one thing that does occur to me is keeping in close touch with each other. We just had an experience trying to negotiate something with the city where, in my opinion, we were in close touch with each other, and questions arose late that seemed unrooted from the entire process that we'd been going through together for quite a long time. I don't want that to happen again. That's destructive. So let's keep in touch with each other.
Well, just follow up on that. I think to gather numbers, to gather information. There has been so much work done on this topic that I think the information is there. We have it. We can put together something and have a good understanding, to Gary's point, without spending money on it before going to the commission. I would like to say, though, unlike Frank, I can't really let the process part go. It's upsetting to me to hear about it. The reason I asked my initial question about how you two were, if it was in concert or what, the idea of 8 or 9 months with some overlap of the two of you having different meetings with different people, it raises concerns for me of how we as a body look with other governments and even within our own village. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who has heard comments about our effectiveness as a body. And it's not something that makes me proud. It's not something I really want to be a part of. And I will leave it just to say that from here going forward, I hope that it can be more of a collaborative effort.
Just to be clear, there has been, and I think everyone on this council was aware that there was a desire to pursue a concurrent possibility, something else. It has been slow. It has been a couple of meetings, and I have to tell you, last week it took off. Okay.
Well,
so that and that's why you've got the information today,
which is fine.
And when I have asked as to the other option, my understanding is it had lost steam and there were some real challenges.
I don't think anyone has a problem with pursuing more than one avenues at the same time. Everyone up here wants playing fields.
You could have had a sunshine meeting with me. Forget about that. You could have called Gene Stearns. You could have said, Gene, hey, I got this going. What do you think? You think maybe we can do it together? We can change the course of things? You know, I would have gone for it. I would have said, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it together.
I hear what you're saying.
You know, it's not acceptable. I'm sorry. Okay, what you did is not acceptable. Everybody on this dais knows it. Everybody who's listening to this meeting knows it. And you know, and at some point, it's got to come to an end. November will be that day. You will no longer be here.
I understand you're running for mayor and you're trying to grandstand.
No, it's nothing to do with mayor. I don't even care about that.
Oh, yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Absolutely.
I think we've
because
reached an
we should
agreement.
all be rowing in the same direction to achieve something that we've desperately wanted. Absolutely not. Okay? It was a dead deal. It was a dead deal.
Okay, so here's my fatherly advice. If it's a dead deal, we still talk to each other. That's the way we do business.
So let's move forward on what we agreed upon.
Thank you. Will do. Next item.
Next item, status update on burn structure on Oasis site. Mayor Lindsay.
Folks, just residents keep on asking me, and I think we've gotten emails to this. Why is there a burnt-out building that has had a fence around it for almost 2 years, and it looks like a crack den in our entry block, and people mow their lawns, and they paint their houses, and they maintain, and they get ticketed for violations of zoning violations, and this is an eyesore and outrageous, and so I promised a couple of people I'd put this on the agenda so that they could hear the whys, and that they want something to be done.
I think the reason that it exists as it does is to make the entry block look good.
There you go. Sergio. And I know you inherited this.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. And you're absolutely right. And we did receive a lot of complaints. And upon a slow response to permitting, we had the burnt structure boarded up and secured. And we even had staff take it to the unsafe structures meeting earlier this year. The building officials' request to demolish was upheld, but the board gave the applicants 60 days to obtain their permit, and they're getting it tomorrow. So tomorrow they will get their building permit at the last minute. So we should see some activity as soon as they get their permit working on that property.
For demolition?
I just hope we don't have to wait.
What's happening?
For demolition?
No. That was the alternative. If they did not get their building permit within 60 days, then the building official can step in and demolish the building. And they got their building permit on the last day.
So they're going to improve the.
So they're going to finish the
And
improvement.
what is the timeline they have to initiate work once the permit is granted?
Well, they can initiate it immediately after they get their permit, and they have 180 days based on the decision of the Unsafe Structures Board.
They have 180 days from
They have
the
180
issuance of
days.
the permit?
They have 180 days after.
Just to initiate work?
To complete.
To complete.
No, to complete.
To complete.
Yes. Okay.
6 months.
Okay, now we know.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, Mayor.
Next item, Mayor's update on underground utility task force meetings. Councilmember Moss.
I wanted to bring this up just to give you guys an update on the task force for the underground utilities. We've been meeting monthly. We've been on top of the engineers, the public relations firm, finding what we approved today, the firm that's going to do the special assessments methodology. And one thing that I wanted to bring up that we're going to do over the summer, and I would like all of you to know about it. We started working with the public relations side, and they've come up with a website, and they will launch it over the summer. We thought that it was a good idea to do it because it's a place where people can go and get information. And I would urge all of you to take a look at it when it's up. It'll probably take about a month, and it will come on. We decided to hold out on any mailers or anything because we also want to make sure that once the master plan comes in is going to be the time really then to start sending out and reaching out to the residents. So we decided on keeping with the soft launch of a more passive way of reaching out to people, which would be a website. And in the timeline, what we're looking at is we're thinking that the master plan should be somewhat coming to a finalization in August. They'll be doing some tweaks, so we'll go through the budget meeting, and in October, I think that they're going to be ready to present the master plan to us. At that time, we're hoping that the methodology report that we just approved tonight would also be coming in at the same time, and it could give us a very good look from the opinions of costs from our engineers and actually look property by property of how would it affect and how much would it cost to do the project. When it does come, we would be looking then at this board, the council, to start taking some actions to move quickly if we want to proceed forward with the project. But at that time, we'll have a much better picture in October of what the project is and what it will cost and how it would be distributed equitably over the island.
It's good.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Brett, one question that has come up repeatedly is we do this in the island, we do this within our jurisdictional boundary, and we have points of vulnerability on the causeway. And if above ground lines go down in a storm, what have we accomplished? That's a reasonable question.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of data that has come. They've presented data to us of what is the effects from overhead lines versus buried power lines and storms just throughout the year, and it's significantly better. We had a conversation with FPL, and right now, the way that I understand it is that the power is coming from underneath the bay, and it comes into our power station, and then it gets distributed out from there. So once it comes out of the power station, it's already going to be underground. So it should be that should not have a huge effect on us.
Do you think the stanchions that are visible around Crandon Marina serve the lighting along the causeway?
Yes, and I think it also serves Crandon Marina also. So it comes from, I believe it's from our substation, and it goes north into the Crandon Marina. And so, that is not going to get buried, and they're going to have to deal with that. Most of our power outages happen just from plants and trees that hit the lines. But in a storm, it would be much, much more secure underground than it would be overhead.
Yeah.
Brett, I think there is a section of the feeder lines from the mainland that isn't underground and it's not under the bay and it is exposed. And the manager and I's conversation with FP&L having to do with the condition of the substation, that did come out.
Yep.
And we haven't been very successful getting them to acknowledge any problem other than trees and plants being the culprit. So I think it would be a great idea to make sure that the commission fully investigates how the power gets to us so that we know that if we go through this project, we're secure up to that point. We're just not spending $30 million for a weak link someplace that we can't control.
Agreed. So you're saying from Turkey Point, it's going to be above ground, and at some point it goes underground, and there's still weak points when it's above ground. The thing is, it's coming from some major lines at that time. So if anything goes down, those are the first things that go back up.
Yeah.
So it's the later, the lower you get and the farther away you go, the longer it takes to get those ones up and running. So I understand what you're saying, and we had an FPL here last week. I think we had our meeting, and we were actually talking about the whole travel and how it gets to the key. And we talked a lot about the, and I think you've had meetings about it too, but about the substation. And they assured us we had more than enough sufficiency there, and that they're going to do the presentation at our next meeting. But they did show us that even the demand has lowered, or not has lowered, but has pretty much plateaued, where they were expecting it to rise, but they're saying that the increase of demand in Key Biscayne has somewhat slowed down. Well, has slowed down a lot because of better types of electrical loads, electrical lights and things like that, and more efficient electrical appliances and things like that, and the expansion wasn't as what they thought it was going to be.
We actually saw the same information prepared by FP&L, and I'm not an electronics engineer by any means, but it's hard for me to believe that when 1,100 square foot homes are replaced by 5,000 and 6,000 square foot homes, and when Oceana didn't exist back when we did the substation study, and it does exist now, I can't believe that we don't use more electricity than we did 13 years ago when they said we needed a new substation. We sort of hit a roadblock in being able to counter that, but maybe there's a way you can get into it, because again, we need to do something for our community, and undergrounding seems to be the best way to go, but it's very expensive, it's very disruptive, and we need to make absolutely sure that there aren't any weak links, and the information that we're getting from FP&L is in fact true, even though it seems hard to believe.
We will do it.
Great.
I can give you what I understood, what they told me with that, but
if I may, Gary, it was the same dog and pony show by the same people.
Yeah.
Right.
They're spewing the same information that was just as incorrect when they told it to you and I in my conference room.
Mm-hmm.
So
I totally agree.
We need to go to another level.
Whether it's part of Brett's project or something, we need to get our experts or people that we can rely on to at least give us the right questions to ask, so that it kind of poke holes into their dog and pony show. And we have that report. Let's send it to someone, or I can consult with someone or anyone. I mean, anyone can, but let's try to find what the weaknesses are in that report.
Well, we hit a dead end. We couldn't find anywhere to go with this report to prove or disprove it, because it was
everyone works for FPL.
Exactly, the whole world works for FP&L.
Monopoly. Monopoly. But what we requested was that they do the presentation in front of our board. They said that we could just send it to you, but what we wanted to do is have it in public, because I think your meeting was, in an office. They came and they said, we could just send you, we can just send you the information. They didn't do the presentation for us yet, but we said, no, come and do the presentation. So it's in public that people can come and see and listen. If anybody knows of some people who have this background in our community, we should try to invite them to come to that meeting when we have it. I don't know when our next meeting is going to be. I think it's in August.
It's in
It'll be the
August.
next board. No, we have one in July. No, we have one in July. That's right. We have one in July.
There's one question.
We don't take vacations.
Too many people are depending on you. One question I'd like to include in the analysis is legal. What is the service standard that FP&L is statutorily obligated to fulfill? I don't think it's adequacy or more than adequacy. I think it's stronger than that. But let's find out. Can you help with that?
Yeah. And I think this is good because the board's listening, and I think it's good to have your guys' feedback so they can get deeper into it.
And apart from the wattage, the substation sits on a barrier island on a concrete pad that's 3 inches above grade. That doesn't seem wise in terms of future investment.
Sea level rise.
Yeah, no, it has to. And even
What
storm
about,
flooding.
and it's not hardened the way
it's-
the new ones are when they construct them.
Right.
On a different idea, what about the hardening project that they have, ready to go? How much can we make them wait for the?
I think as long as we are continuing moving forward with the process, I think John can maybe chime in on this, but as long as they see us moving forward, they're not coming in and installing. If we end with the master plan and sit, then the next question would be, how long can we sit on that doing nothing before they want to come in and harden?
Ironically, we're being used as an example to Pinecrest and other municipalities of why they haven't moved forward, because we're taking aggressive steps towards undergrounding.
And I think it's important in October when this comes back that we are prepared to make a decision on what we want to do and live with those implications. If we decide not to do it, this is what's going to happen. If we decide to do it, this is what we need to do. So in October, I think this is going to be coming into the agenda, and I want to prepare you guys as well to make sure you're ready for it.
A quick question for you. When they come back with their feasibility of how to apply the financial part of this, will they have taken into account FPL's discount and all of that? And will they be able to give us those actual numbers so we have an understanding of that?
Yes, they'll give you the discounts. What they're going to give is an opinion of cost. It will not be the actual cost, but it'll be a very, close cost based on the drawings that they have in front of it, based on their experience. But remember, it is the engineers that are giving us the cost. And when it goes out to bid, you'll get the actual cost.
And am I correct that there's still 2 ways that we are hoping to save money? One is there is a credit or a refund on the state level. And number 2, FP&L is willing to give us the money that they would use to harden our community towards undergrounding.
No, it's
We
more
have
than,
both
I
of
think
those?
they're both things.
2 things from FPL.
Is that accurate or
One
not?
was a credit for the service calls they likely will not be making, and the other was the hardening costs.
What was the
I
first
know
one?
there's a tariff.
and the remaining life of the existing infrastructure.
So what I understand is that the tariff that was implemented was because if you do a municipal-wide burying in the power lines, there's a savings for FPL in the operations, basically. So they will give you a discount for that. And I know that Palm Beach also went to FPL and said, hey, we want more money because, we're you don't have to harden now. So they have agreed to, they don't know, I don't even think Palm Beach knows what the number is yet, at least the last time I spoke to them, but there was some type of talking that FPL is going to reimburse what those hardening costs would have been if they came in and did it. What that number, we won't know.
Yes,
when they came before us, one of the times that they spoke, they mentioned 2 different sums of money for us.
Mhm.
One was the cost for the reduced service calls, and that's the 25%, and then the other was the cost so that they don't, the price of them not hardening.
Yeah, and
whatever the value is they put on that.
And the 25% means you get that only if you bury everything in the municipality down.
And
You
you do it
cannot
with-
just do one neighborhood and leave another neighborhood. You lose the 25%.
And you have to do it within a certain period of time,
Yeah. Don't ask me what that period is.
18 months or something.
You have to bury everything? within
No,
18 months?
no.
Start
Yeah.
within.
It's like a 5-year project.
Is the concrete stanchion on McIntyre an example of the hardening
Yes.
project? So we should, before September, go look at it.
It doesn't
You
look pretty.
sent out some great pictures of hardening in Miami-Dade County, which really,
I can send it again to you guys if you
please
want.
do, because it was really visually very impactful and
I wonder if it's possible to have some sort of like a information page even on the website with pictures like that, because those were big, really impactful pictures for us, but I think our residents
it's a great idea.
should see that.
It's a great idea.
Because the image there is, if we don't do this project, that is
What
what
you're
we're
getting.
going to get.
Yep.
Exactly right.
And also with the other information, like you're getting all new state-of-the-art wiring, you're likely to have less impact from wind and
Right.
and to be honest too, the pros and the cons, because it's not
Yep.
only win-win.
Correct.
Yeah, we can simplify the data about the percentage of reliability and how much it changes between
Yes.
overhead and underground. So,
Okay.
Next item?
thank you.
Thank
you.
you. That was
Next item,
excellent.
update regarding Key Biscayne Beach restoration. Councilmember Gross.
I promised everyone I wouldn't talk, so I'm not talking anymore.
Next item,
Right at the end.
Nice, right at the end. That's leadership.
Next item, we've got the,
medical marijuana moratorium.
That is
Yes,
leadership by example.
Absolutely.
So, as you guys know, a couple months ago, you adopted a zoning in progress for medical marijuana. That has lapsed, and we're here to bring back to you not a moratorium, but another zoning in progress, and hopefully to get some direction from you guys to bring an ordinance forward at your August meeting. My partner, Kathy Mahaffey's here. She can give you a brief kind of synopsis of the law and really the guidance that we're looking for.
Good evening. I will be very brief and to the point. You have a good summary in your backup materials. Basically, regarding zoning medical marijuana, the state has preempted a lot of the regulations that local governments can do, and they've left local governments with essentially two essential choices, which kind of comes out to three. Basically, local governments are allowed to either flat out ban medical marijuana dispensaries, which is a dispensary is solely the dispensing and selling retail sale of medical marijuana, whether it is low THC or high THC, but it is only that retail sale. It's not any other component of it. So a local government can ban that facility, or they can regulate it, providing that they regulate it in the exact same way that they regulate pharmacies. So that leaves local governments with a choice: do we allow them or do we not allow them? Subsequent to that, if a local government decides to allow them, do they want to revise the regulations of pharmacies and treat them both in some way, but the same way, but impose some type of restrictions, often something like a distance restriction. And if you wanted to allow them, then I would recommend that you let staff take a look at your existing pharmacies and your existing regulations and come back to you with a recommendation. So my goal here tonight is, if you can give us and staff some general recommendations and general guidance in terms of whether you would like to ban them or whether you would like to regulate them and permit the dispensaries, and then to adopt the zoning in progress, which gives you 180 days in which to adopt the ordinances that will implement whatever your direction is. I'd be happy to answer questions.
just a quick recap. So what Florida has allowed for is medical marijuana. It is not for recreational use. It's for medical use. And now it's very easy to get the medical. I think it's not that easy.
There is a process that you have to go through. You do have to get an approval from a doctor. There is a very broad, list
yeah.
of conditions. It is not recreational marijuana.
It's not recreational.
However, there is full-strength medical marijuana that is permitted in certain circumstances, for people who are determined to be terminally ill.
But, and my follow-up to that is, I understood at one point that there was going to be the ability to have it delivered from different venues. Is that still on the table where you can have it delivered?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Delivery is available statewide. At this point, I believe 7 of the, maybe only 6 of the current licensed medical marijuana treatment facilities, centers are delivering in various portions of the state. So delivery is available statewide, and any of your residents can get delivery at this time.
You said treatment, you mean dispensary here.
What the state licenses medical marijuana treatment centers, and that is the global organization. There are right now the ability to license a number of them. There are 13 licenses out there right now in various stages of sub-licensing, because there's license, once they are issued a global license, there is a license for growing and processing and delivery and retail, and those are all sub-licenses. So those 13 that have currently been issued, and that's the global organization, have various sub-licenses. All of these are operated in a vertical structure. So you have these 13 licenses, and they're responsible for growing, they're responsible for processing, they're manufacturing, delivery, and dispensing. So each of these dispensing facilities that you will see out there, and there are currently 43 operating in the state, each of those are actually an actual facility from one of those, operated by one of those 13 licensed organizations.
Do we know what our neighbors are doing, Chad?
It's all over the board. Some have prohibited, some have regulated it. Kathy, what do you see? I know Kathy's been doing this around the state. What have you seen the most of?
Really, it is very, very split. As you know, there's a lot of initial wait and see, so kind of banning and wait and see see how it really falls out. There are organizations that have chosen to regulate just exactly the way things are. A number have chosen to implement some new restrictions on their pharmacies in order to restrict the medical marijuana dispensaries as well. I would say more are leaning towards banning, but there are definitely organizations and local governments working, considering both options.
And you can reverse a ban down the road, or no?
Yes, if you ban, it is very simple at any point in time. It's simply an ordinance change. It is a land. It does require, you know, your first reading, your second reading, local planning agency review, but it's simply an ordinance change. I will tell you that it is much more difficult to allow them and then ban them. It's very simple to ban them and then allow them, but once you have given a right and you take it back, things get a lot more complicated.
Mm-hmm. And the delivery services that you mentioned, if we had residents here who required this, how does that happen? They can deliver anywhere in the state?
They can, yes, ma'am. They
like
can
it
deliver.
Comes in the mail?
It's Uber dope.
It is not allowed. It cannot be shipped. It cannot be put in the mail. It is delivered by the actual licensed organization. They have a very, very structured program and security for those vehicles. They can't be identified. They have special security on them. I think they have to have 2 people in them. It's very detailed
Sounds
requirements.
Expensive delivery.
Pardon me?
Sounds like it would be expensive delivery.
I don't know what the costs are. But they are delivering, and that is preempted to the state. We can't prohibit it, and no local governments can prohibit it.
My concern, I keep trying to find what the negative is. My concern is if somebody really needs the medicine, why are we just saying, no, you have to go? I mean, I'm glad that you're saying it can be delivered. If it wasn't delivered, it would be a bigger concern, because it's just like, no, you can't buy it here. You're going to have to go drive somewhere and find your medicine. I mean, if you really need it and it's legal, I just don't know why you're just like, no, just that one you can't have, but all the opioids and everything else, go ahead. And it's just, I don't know, it's medicine, and it's there for a reason, because someone needs it for something. And I don't know, I'm trying to see what's the negative side of this? Because if it's only for medicine, we're not talking about recreational. If it's only for medicine, I just don't know what the banning is going to do. And if you're getting a delivery, I don't know. I have a hard time understanding what.
It's strictly a moral judgment. That's all. There's really no practical reason.
Yeah, but the pharmacies, what they're handing out right now are way worse, and it's just, I don't understand why if somebody, morally, I feel worse to tell somebody who needs something, medicine-wise, that you can't have it just because I don't agree with it. Morally, that's worse for me.
But the reason for banning it is a moral issue.
Katie?
For those that want to ban it.
I'm just wondering why we have to weigh in as a municipality one way or the other. Do we have to make a decision? Do we have to regulate or ban?
If you choose not to, if you do not proactively choose to ban, then you are by default under state law allowing it.
And then it becomes difficult to ban if we have an issue down the road.
But to be clear, if we default to state law, then they will be treated the same as pharmacies. So wherever they're permitted, wherever pharmacies are permitted within the village, then the dispensary will be permitted, subject to certain spacing requirements.
But we can regulate.
The only spacing requirements under state law are that they have to be 500 feet from a private or public elementary, middle school, or high school.
Well,
That's
they
the
can't
only,
exist.
those are the only spacing requirements at this time.
Right. So, it would. You're correct. But it's not the entire island. There are limited areas along Crandon Boulevard that these types of uses still will be able to go. But you are fortunate that you're not going to see a ton of them because of that spacing requirement of the 500 feet.
I mean, do we know the actual area that could even happen?
We can't even keep restaurants in business and everyone on the island
have a lot of
eats.
people coming in to buy.
What I don't want to lose is the ability to regulate it if we wanted to. So you're saying that if we allow it, it gets then it's the state that controls what's going to happen with it. If we regulate it now, would we be able to just maintain that control? But it's regulated. We're allowing it, but we're still controlled, not the state.
Or we ban it and do a wait and see what the issues are.
If you default to the state, then you're up to whatever happens in Tallahassee.
Yeah, which I don't like. I don't like.
If you have an ordinance in place, you have more control, assuming that the legislature doesn't go and preempt what you already have adopted.
Okay.
So
just allowing it, I probably would not be for. I would either ban and wait or set an ordinance so we don't, so we have more of the control and not leave it to the state.
But
I think
maybe the Ritz too.
I think there's only one place I think that is far enough from a school that you could actually have a store here in Key Biscayne, and I think it's
the Magic of Learning is right across the street from CVS.
Wait, Allison's right. The Magic of Learning.
Magic of Learning is there.
The Magic of Learning would be a preschool.
Yeah.
And the preschool, it does not fall into the distance
it
requirement.
doesn't.
There are
They're not at risk.
Preschool's
out.
There are 5 areas of C1 zoning that may possibly be outside of that distance requirement. So there are several areas, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 areas that don't fall within 500 feet of a school in our preliminary look.
You're saying what, a block or?
500 feet.
No, what I'm saying, you're saying there are areas that you.
There are areas of C1 zoning that do not fall within 500 feet of a school.
Can we continue the zoning in progress until we can figure this out at the next meeting or something?
So you can. We would just suggest, though, that we do get some guidance soon because we can't continue to keep rolling these things.
Can we bring it in August?
Sure.
Since we know about it, we can come up with what our options are. Let's do a zoning in progress, bring it in August agenda and this.
Yes.
Ban it or put an ordinance
We
in
can
front.
ban it even if we've done zoning in progress.
That's correct.
And I would recommend tonight that you do the zoning in progress.
Yeah,
that starts
that's fine.
that and keeps you in the driver's seat. We can come back in August with a little bit, it's basically, those are your options, is to ban it or to allow it. And if you allow it, staff would put together, based on the existing facilities, where the places that it can go. And you can consider whether or not you want to put into place distance requirements. And that's really because your ability to regulate is very limited, because you have to, every regulation you impose on a dispensary, you also have to impose on a pharmacy. So your ability to regulate is very limited. But distance requirements is something that might be able to apply based on what staff will do an inventory of your existing pharmacies and analyze those distance.
Move to continue the zoning in progress.
I would second it.
I think,
I would ask,
Jenny, if you could read the title of the resolution.
Sure.
That's in the back, and then.
I'd like to know how much the delivery fee is.
I just Googled it. I'm Googling it right now.
if I could
Because
ask,
after this meeting today, I've got a little anxiety.
if I could ask a question as soon as she reads the title, please.
Sure.
A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, declaring zoning in progress for preparation of amendments to land development regulations to prohibit or regulate medical marijuana facilities, providing for transmittal and providing for an effective date.
So that's seconded.
Yep.
What do you need?
Madam Mayor, I would ask that you don't defer the zoning in progress. I would ask that you take action on the zoning in progress. All that does is give you yourselves 180 days to actually do the ordinance. So I would ask that you approve the zoning in progress tonight in order to protect yourselves and keep you in the driver's seat, and then direct staff to come back in August with some more information and recommendations.
I'll tell you, I feel that I do need more information, yeah.
That's
So
the motion.
your motion was
My
to
motion is
defer
to-
the zoning in progress.
No, my motion is to implement the zoning in progress.
Okay, great, thank you. I apologize, I misunderstood.
I do, I agree with you, Brett, completely. If someone needs something, they should have access to it, period. I am wondering, but I don't know what the impacts are right now as these dispensaries are being set up. And I'm also wondering if it's a $10 fee, is that onerous to have it delivered? So these are just the things I'm thinking of. So I do need more information. It should be zoning in progress, at least for me.
I'm fine with
I'm
that.
just not ready to make a decision.
Yeah, I'm fine with zoning in progress.
Just so we know where I am, my instinct is not to regulate this. I don't see the point to it, and I don't think there's going to be a metastasis of dispensary facilities on our island.
I ban it.
No,
No, he just wouldn't touch it.
I would leave it alone.
You wouldn't touch it. You'd allow it to be like a pharmacy.
Yeah.
That's
The
possible.
pharmacies can dispense it too, or no?
No.
That would be.
Should we
that
vote
would
on
be
the
Only the
resolution?
licensed dispensaries affiliated or that are part of the licensed
That
medical
chain.
marijuana treatment centers can dispense.
Do you have a map that shows where you think that this would actually?
They're going to show us that in
I
August, I
do,
think.
we do. Do we have the capability to put it up on the screen?
Why don't we just, we can circulate
Bring
it
it on August.
in between, and we'll have
Perfect.
we'll have everything in August.
I'll circulate it. No
Take the
problem.
vote, because Gary went to the trouble of not saying another word, so.
I know, Gary. Good job.
Councilmember Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Petros.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Yes.
Councilmember De La Cruz.
Yes.
Councilmember Gross.
Can I say a word? Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And Councilmember McCormick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I make
Thank
a
you.
motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Gilbert.